OTB AM with Gillette in association with Movember. Effortless shave, magnificent mo.
7:30 OTB AM. You are joining us live from our brand new studio, and I hope you're hearing me all right there. You're looking well, lads. How are you keeping?
Not too bad yourself,
Keeping well, Adrian.
I'm offended on so many levels this morning, and that's one of them.
Decided to, yeah.
It is chronic, Shane.
Jeez, that looks great. Wow.
Brutal. And
This
what
is
our
only
audience
gonna be for
haven't
the
yet
first
seen
while in the
is
show.
that.
Wow.
So for context, for people at home wondering why we look like this, I guess, Colm, I had a conversation with Adrian the other day at we had a work event, and yeah, I was wearing a colourful shirt. People will have seen it on air the other day, but yeah, Adrian didn't like it. He's not a man for
Well, it was chronic.
Not a man for flamboyance.
Let's face it, it was absolutely chronic.
So we figured, listeners and viewers, we would offend Adrian in the highest possible way this morning by wearing two of our fancier shirts, I guess, Colm, you could say.
Yeah.
I will say Colm has definitely won that battle of.
I think so. You know what?
Yours is a bit. Your shirt. Were you putting this on the basis that it was like more outrageous than the shirt you were wearing the other day?
See, this is the thing. I do it quite commonly. I wear a bad shirt often enough. Now, I've got little roses in front of a kind of
that shirt is
zebra
way better
pattern.
than the one you were wearing the other day.
Okay, right. I have others, Adrian. Don't worry. We've plenty of Fridays to work together.
That on the other hand.
That's actually lovely. And it suits your personality, suits your presenting style, suits the show.
This isn't
I
what I was
think-
going for. I was going to offend Adrian, but he's after telling me it was better than
I know it does
No,
offend
it's
Adrian.
better- it's better than
It does offend Adrian.
better than
It's
this.
100%
I love
offend Adrian.
Columns, but-
Thanks very much. Yeah, I got it there on a stag, and it was kind of a tropical theme. And then I wore it, and then people were like, "Oh, you could just wear that." And I love an orange. And I was rushing into the studio this morning, and I didn't have time to eat my orange because Jojo was like, "You have 40 seconds."
Right.
And I had a decision to make: do I want the orange, or do I want to go live on OTB AM?
Yeah. No.
Are you just happy with the decision I made?
Who said to you that you could just wear that? Because whoever that is.
Well, I'm 33, but that's first of all, that helps. So I could wear it myself.
Because he's an adult.
And then I was talking to Shane there yesterday, and usually we would say, like, what are you going to wear tomorrow? What are you going to wear on the show tomorrow?
Fashion.
Yeah, we have about
Really?
we have a 5-minute powwow.
Yeah.
What do you want to wear tomorrow? What colour do you want to go for?
Okay.
And then we were like, oh, Adrian's going to be in town. And so we thought you were going to wear your white shirt PowerPoint presentation for
Okay.
today.
The white shirt only comes out for Damian Brown, it appears.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Correct, yeah.
But you went for the kind of Connemara look, and it's quite nice. It's quite nice. You're very much like the straight man, and I think you played quite well. And as I said to you last Friday, it's all up to you to entertain the masses. You get the Friday feeling. We're in a new studio, temporary studio, just for today's the last day. And Adrian, take it away. Entertain.
No. I mean, I look forward to 25 minutes time or 20 minutes time when I can sort of, I feel as if I need to wear sunglasses, and the fact that Shane's shirt is not even the most offensive thing in the studio this morning is quite an achievement. Now, Stephen Gerrard has been, for the people who are waking up this morning, good morning to you, and delighted you could join us this morning. Stephen Gerrard's been sacked. He was fired last night after Villa went down to Fulham, and he finds himself without a job this morning. And I mean, it's no great surprise. People have been talking about it for a while now, that things just weren't working out for him. Obviously, within a whisker of the bottom three, or as Dean Saunders put it this morning, that Villa fans won't accept Villa being 19th in the Premier League. They're 17th, but regardless, I think his point still holds that they see themselves as a 7th, 8th, 9th position club. And it clearly, like, there was some chat that maybe he would hang on until Brentford at the weekend, and we would see what happened at that point. But it became pretty obvious last night that just wasn't going to happen. And it was the brevity of the statement that came out last night.
Yeah.
Aston Villa thanking Stephen for his hard work and his time at the club, and pretty much not much else. And also how quick it was after the full whistle.
I really thought they'd wait till this morning. That's what I expected. This is very much kind of pang of the first time Jose Mourinho left Chelsea.
Yeah.
I think it was close to midnight. They had drawn with Rosenborg the night before.
Yeah.
And it was a bizarre time to depart, and that was so seismic when Mourinho left for the first time. Less so this time with Stephen Gerrard and Aston Villa. It's been coming a long time. And we were talking yesterday, Shane, about like, will we do the Villa piece this morning? Like, should we concentrate on it? And we thought, on our way to Fulham, like, there's a good chance to get a point there or something. But
happens.
I mean, just to be so comprehensively beaten by Fulham, it's Fulham's biggest Premier League win in almost exactly 9 years. It's the first clean sheet they've kept all season. And, 3-0 was the very least that they deserved. They absolutely dominated the game. And for like Gerrard, it's 2 wins in 12 games this season. And I was trying to think back to myself without looking it up first. When was Gerrard appointed? I thought it was so much longer ago than it actually was. Only last November. He didn't see the full 12 months. Look, I thought they were promising starts for him, like Philip Coutinho signing, got the best out of Coutinho initially. Do you remember when they played Manchester United at Villa Park and Coutinho was brilliant that game, like fabulous performance. I thought, Gerrard's going to get the best out of Coutinho, and I really wanted to see what he could do as a manager. But genuinely, I thought going back a year when he was performing well at Rangers and won the league and, you know, stopped Celtic doing the 10 in a row, I was thinking to myself, Aston Villa, I understand the temptation, but what's he realistically going to achieve at Villa? Like, what's the best case scenario at Villa?
Yeah.
And so I kind of thought to myself, maybe stay at Rangers for a couple of more years, rack up a few more titles, and your CV's getting better and better on paper, and then another possibly higher job will come along. I thought he jumped quite soon. Maybe it was a fear that I'm not going to get this opportunity again.
Yeah.
And I genuinely did think that at the time. Thought he started well, but faded so badly, didn't he?
It was also that Celtic were on that trajectory. So with Ange, that you're kind of thinking and Gerrard probably realised maybe Celtic are going to win the next couple of titles here. They're probably a better team and clearly are a better team than Rangers at the minute. Yeah, like listening to Mick McCarthy, our own Mick McCarthy last night in the show, he was having a bit of an existential crisis. Like when that Mings own goal went in for the third, you're just like, it obviously has to happen tonight. The brevity of the statement was it was almost like a comedy bit. It was funny to read the statement that short because it was like if they could have got less words in, they would have done so. Like
it was like a tweet.
It was
character
a tweet,
limit.
Like limit. But then you kind of think apparently he got his own car home from the match last night, or a limousine kind of paid for by the club, so we didn't have to sit in the coach and tell the players, and I'm sure he has spoken to the players since, but you'd wonder like where does Gerrard go from here? Where, like what's his level now? Is he he's probably a championship manager at best?
It's actually a very good question. I could see him back in Scottish football. I think it really suited him. I think it suits his managerial style, which is very much like accountability on the player's part. And I think one of his last musings to the media was that his attacking players need to do more in a very kind of I suppose style from 10 or 20 years ago, where like I can only do so much as the manager and it's kind of up to the players to do it. Like you'd hear a lot of pundits of his era say that on TV now, where it's like we're in a totally different era of football where players thrive on detail. They love detail. Like you hear the reason that Jadon Sancho struggled a lot at United is because of the lack of detail given to him. Whereas traditionally you would think of forward flair players like, just go out and play. And I do feel Gerrard's that style of manager where if the results aren't coming, you have nothing really to fall back on, because there's no overriding philosophy of football.
But it's when you look at the squad on paper, like when John McGinn got the captaincy, there was a bit of controversy over it and the way it was handled with Tyrone Mings. But I mean, McGinn's been absolutely brutal. Tyrone Mings has had a shocking season. Coutinho is not the Coutinho of old. But the thing is, he's lowered the bar so much. Yeah, right.
How much? And there's a lot of chat about who's going to come in. Like some of the names that have been linked, I'm like, really? But
who are you thinking there? The name, like Spacino,
Tuchel,
crazy.
If you look at the betting, like Tuchel is on there's a long list of names there. And look, I don't know, it could even end up Thomas Frank is obviously one of the names been.
It'll be Sean Dyche, lads. It'll have to be Sean.
Sean Dyche, obviously another one. But he's lowered the bar so much that for the new person coming in, it's like great, like Tyrone Mings, Matty Cash, John McGinn.
Yeah.
Like that. What the job that's required there is we know they're good footballers.
Yeah.
They have a good squad.
Somebody to come in.
They have a good team.
Give them a bit of a boost of confidence. And like the one thing that you would have hoped, and like the point that you make about Gerrard's comments about the players is kind of interesting in the sense that you kind of feel that most managers have that thought anyway. Right? They're like, geez, you let me down today, or you could have done a bit better, and like you're making me look bad, or whatever. Right? You would think most football managers are sort of that mold, particularly from the era maybe that he came through. But you can't be on the TV every week saying, calling players out.
Yeah. The
whole public nature of the Tyrone Mings thing. Like he never really considered the impact that was going to have on him.
The PR battle.
So I do think that whoever it is that comes in, will really, like you will get the initial bounce, but I do think that
that's what he gave them.
We're asking what could he possibly achieve at Aston Villa. I think you could totally understand why he went to Aston Villa, and on their best season they're going to make it into the Europa League.
Yeah, but there's a ceiling with that success, because for me it wasn't so much Aston Villa themselves, it was what he was already doing. So at Rangers, you basically 50-50 chance of winning the league every year.
I know, but
and so you can rack up the titles, and it looks great in the
for
CV.
A player who spent his entire career, hooked around, he's this winner.
Yeah, that's
never going to be enough.
But you're talking about the squad and the players. Like if you're a manager that comes in, the back four of Young, Mings, Konsa, Bednarek, that's a relegation back four.
Do you think so?
Yeah, that's not good enough.
Mings 2022, fair enough.
Well, yeah, this on form And Ashley Young, look, he's probably been one of the better players, ironically enough, but he's not good enough to push team on to Europe anymore. He's not the Ashley Young we used to see. I'd be seriously concerned.
But that's so that would be my argument about Gerrard's management style. I would say he would agree with you privately. My back four is not good enough. But I think the point of modern management is that it's kind of irrelevant about the individual players. They all have a certain level that they can get to. And then it's about the management getting more out of them. So for example, Graham Potter at Brighton, his back four probably wasn't much better than Villa's, really, on paper. And the thing is that Potter got more out of them. And he's actually probably the argument against what I was saying about going to Villa is that, sure, what can he achieve at Villa realistically? And Potter just hit such a sweet spot for the first 6 weeks of this season that got on that Chelsea gig. Because it was only a year ago where Brighton's fans were booing Potter at the end of the game. Do you remember he was shaking his head to the camera and was like, what are you booing for? Because they couldn't score a goal. And Potter had this amazing start to the season this year, and it coincided with Tuchel being shafted from Chelsea. So it's all about timing. It's like Wall Street. Like football is like supply and demand, and at that moment in time, Potter was perfect for Chelsea, and Gerrard went the other way.
I almost think there's an argument as well. Like when you talk about managers making a connection with fans, like we were talking on the show yesterday about Thomas Frank and Graham Potter speaking, pre-match the other night together and asking each other questions, which was unheard of and unseen in the Premier League. They're creating a connection. They both have connections with their fans. Gerrard never had a connection with the Villa supporters. No. Like he never even seemed like he was trying to. He almost had a barrier up, and you could tell it was the polished PR Steven Gerrard. That's a problem. Like
they're a bit. You're absolutely spot on. I think that there are big comparisons with Roy Keane in this whole thing as well. In that, you look at that first couple of years as the manager, albeit at Rangers, where they go on that unbelievable run, unbeaten for the season. They're top in their Europa League group. Bridge the 10-year gaps into the last one. They're this big level of success, and then suddenly, quickly, the wheels come off, and he's scrambling. And I don't know where Steven Gerrard goes from here. I do think that there is a lot of comparisons with the Keane stuff. Maybe your initial reaction for somebody like Stevie G, because he's been the main man at those clubs. I know he did some Liverpool Academy stuff, but wouldn't it be a recommendation for him to go off and be an assistant somewhere?
Yeah, I think so.
Try and ply his trade, or be a League One manager for a while, or be a Championship manager for a while, which never seemed to bother Roy Keane, and he obviously went about that with Ireland and with Villa.
Yeah, it killed him though. Killed his managerial career. It killed him. It didn't help him. It didn't help him get managerial career.
I don't think that killed it.
That didn't singularly do it, but I don't think it helped.
Yeah,
but there's ego there. How can you go from being a Premier League manager at Steven Gerrard's level to then being either a Championship manager or an assistant in Premier League?
Well, if you're a prospective employer and you see that, okay, he was previously a manager of a Premier League side and now he's an assistant or first team coach at another club, it's that doesn't fill me with confidence, and that he's going to inspire a group again as a manager, because players will read into that and think, you became an assistant. I'm not saying that's right. I'm saying that's realistic.
Who's going to be queuing up to give Stevie G a job anyway?
I think I wouldn't be surprised if, maybe not by the end of the season, but maybe this time next year, if Jurgen Klopp gives him a job at Liverpool, if he allows him back in, and just part of the coaching staff, not the assistant.
Jurgen Klopp,
not the first team coach. No, he might. There might be a certain. Now, if Phil Egan's listening to this downstairs, he's going mental. It's keep Stevie G out of the club. I know he thinks that way, and maybe others do.
I'm sure all the Liverpool fans who, when Gerrard got the Villa job and they were like, okay, this is great. This
Next
is,
step.
remember when he got the job?
Totally.
What was the conversation? It's a stepping stone to Liverpool. He couldn't be further from Liverpool.
That's why he took. That must have been a huge reason why he took the Aston Villa job. If I do well here, Klopp's going to leave. Because at the time a year ago, there was a different conversation around Klopp that he might leave sooner than we think.
Well, he was out of contract and stuff like that.
So you've got to bring it back to November last year about the thought process then. It's not surprising for me how it's worked out, because I do think his managerial style is so limited.
Yeah.
And it's based on but he kind of reflected who he was as a player. It's kind of an all or nothing approach, and there's very little subtlety to it. So okay, who's got better under Gerrard? I'm not sure. McGinn's become more central, but as you say, he's been very poor this season. Coutinho started off flying out of the traps. It kind of goes to your point about, was it Roy Keane you mentioned, Sunderland flew out of the traps as well. There's kind of they kind of sprint the marathon. That's kind of Gerrard as a manager. He sprints when he should be thinking of a longer term approach. And I think there was a bit of maybe insecurity too, that he comes out and he's very critical of the players and media, not afraid to say what he thinks. And maybe that's to cover up for a lack of sophistication in his own coaching. Maybe that's just the theory. Maybe that's in him anyway, but that's what it feels like to me.
I thought it was almost a redeeming feature for him in some ways. The fact that even last night, the fact that he came out and I guess he spoke quite openly and was asked about the fans booing you tonight. He said, obviously on a personal level, it's really disappointing and hard to hear. You got the sense from the post-match interview that he knew he was going.
Yeah.
It was almost.
There's that photograph as well that's on the back of some of the papers. It's absolutely brutal.
Just writing was on the wall.
Gerrard on the brink, but it is that photograph is going to dog him for a while. It's a bad one.
Yeah, like it's what two wins in 7 months against current Premier League teams. And they're like, when you look at players like Ollie Watkins and Danny Ings, we haven't even mentioned. Like, Ings went from scoring 22 goals the season before last, 12 goals last season, to this season. I mean, he just can't hit the target, even, never mind score a goal. Remy Gard was arguably a better Villa manager than Steve Gerrard.
That's a big call.
I mean,
no. Do you remember Dwight York went on TV and was like, "I should be manager, not Remy Gard." Remy Gard.
Yeah, you know you're bad. You know you're bad.
The comments are coming in. Like a few Villa fans are commenting, lads, and they're absolutely delighted this morning.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the thing I also noticed about the statement, lads, was the fact that it was a club spokesman says, and like, you know, the Christian Perslow sitting in the background, Johan Lounge, the sporting director as well, and you're like, rarely you see a sporting director or a CEO lose their job at the same time as a manager, but in Villa's instance, there's a solid argument for that, because we've spoken to Villa journalists on the show before, and there is a lot of antipathy, I guess, towards Perslow and his role in the whole downward slide of the club. Because if Villa do get relegated, I'm not going to say they will, because they'll get the new manager bounce now, you'd imagine, before the World Cup, depending on who comes in. But if they were to go down, they're the type of club who would struggle in the Championship.
It would be ridiculous if they went down. That squad's akin to West Ham's in 2003 when they had Joe Cole and Michael Carrick. Like, that squad's too good to go down. If I'm starting a game of Football Manager in the morning and I have a choice of 20 Premier League clubs, like, they'd be in my top 10 to take over based on the talent they have. Like, I think the one real positive thing he did, and maybe he wasn't directly responsible for this, Gerrard, but I'm sure he at least rubber stamped every decision, was he signed quite well. I think they actually brought in some really interesting attacking players. Like Leon Bailey last night was really ineffective on the right hand side, but you get the right manager in there for him, suddenly you have a seriously good player. Because again, with Bailey, he started well, and that's what Gerrard was able to bring. There was kind of a sprint out the door, like, give him hell, like, straight away, which is Gerrard as a player. Like, Gerrard as a player, I'll take it by the scruff of the neck, but there was no kind of long-term plan. Gerrard was a living in the moment player, and there were some amazing moments.
Mark Hogan says, as a Villa fan, thank God he's gone, the worst tactical manager I've ever seen. I think that there's an overstatedness about all this stuff as well. Like, let's not get too carried away.
Recency bias against them.
And like, look, I was also interested, like your comment earlier on, Colm, like, it is possible for him to go off and figure stuff out and come back a better manager. Like, it's not, this doesn't need to be the end of it, but he does need to be careful about
take time off as well,
about how he gets around it. I'll say a couple more comments here as well. Safe to assume that Gerrard will never manage Liverpool, says Fergus Farrell. 4 wins in 22 games, shocking stats, says Peter Lennon, who also says that Gerrard was arrogant, tactically incompetent and out of his depth. The Roddy Collins of the Premier League, which Roddy did.
Fair and Roddy, isn't it?
Fair and Roddy. The arrogance is the thing that's made people, like, you look yesterday and you see Liz Truss and Stevie G both losing their job, and you're like, all right. People are rubbing their hands. They're like, taking a bit of, I guess, joy.
There is a total glee about it.
Total, like, because of Gerrard's attitude.
Griff says, geez, was there a fire that you had to borrow clothes for this morning's show? Paul,
I'll read out the positive comments.
The flamboyant shirts mixed with Adrian's Clancy Brothers special is quite the combo.
Thank you.
Yeah, Adrian, you look like you like a pint of stout in front of the fire kind of job.
I'm up for that. The fashion guard of the year on the way, says Jim Sullivan. And also, by the way, Latte Larry wondering if we're going to keep him updated on the cricket this morning. Ireland going well and on target. Yeah. They are going well and on target. West Indies 146 for 5 earlier, and in response now Ireland 107 for 1, 108 for 1. And Balbirnie bowled a bit earlier on, but Sterling and Tucker at the crease. So we will, Latte Larry, keep you updated on that over the course of the morning.
Curb Your Enthusiasm fan, great to see.
Yeah,
great to see.
Americano Adrian.
The Ronaldo stuff is also across the back pages this morning. Ronaldo refused to play. The headline says here, United striker defied Ten Hag in Spurs game. This is mounting up as the latest scenario is he refused to come on as a sub. We were all wondering what happened. Why did he leave a little bit earlier? Sent out a bad message. But actually now it's just turned out that he refused to come on as a sub the other night. He's facing a £1 million fine. He's been banished from training with the senior squad. He's not going to be in the squad for the Chelsea game. And it just, the whole point about hanging around at United, or the links that of him to possibly leave United in the close season, was that he was like waiting for this Champions League club to come in.
Yeah.
I mean, the longer it goes on, why was he waiting around for a Champions League club to come in? He was never going to get Champions League football at United anyway. So why would he need to hang around to stink the joint out when, I mean, I don't know, was Ten Hag saying to him, listen, you're not really going to be fully part of my plans, if he knew fully the picture. But why not Why is he hanging around to not play at a club that are not playing in the Champions League when he could have gone to a club to play some football?
If it was up to him, he wouldn't be hanging around. He'd be gone. He was 100% out the door himself. They just can't, like, they couldn't find a club for him, and then United wouldn't release him because it cost him too much money. If it was up to Ronaldo's the only party here who's like, I definitely want to go. I know. I mean, I'm thinking, see if they can let him go now, because his contract expires next summer. So they can, if they let him go now, they can pay half his salary. So it's about £8 million, which is absolutely nothing. To United, like, they should do that. I suppose. Look, they're thinking for their own sake as well. As troublesome as he is, and there probably is no turning back now. This is like Carlos Tevez on the bench for Manchester City away to Bayern Munich. You know, Tevez did come back. He went golfing for a few months and came back. Can't see. I don't know if Ronaldo's a golfer. Like, I don't know what he's going to do. But like, the only thing you'd say about Ronaldo, right? And I'm very much pro get him out of the club. Yeah. Like, he does give you a goal in the Europa League games, in the Leinster, the Premier League, and that's why they're probably like, well, we'll keep him just in case.
I think anybody who's been saying that up to this point has now said, "Grant, that's it, that's enough."
But when
to reach that point now.
Were you excited when the club re-signed him?
Yeah,
100%. Last summer.
Yeah, but half the excitement was kind of because he was heading to Manchester City, and you're like, right, that was stopped, nipped in the bud because Ferguson got involved. I think any United fans, in terms of Ronaldo's previous legacy at the club, would have been tarnished if he played for City, understandably.
Is that really true?
Well, it seemed to have legs.
I would have believed but it was Jesus the biggest luck ever for City is they got
maybe
out for Haaland 12 months later.
Chess,
he's an anti or Ronaldo playing chess.
Or Ronaldo, you're going to say an anti-City player. He's an anti-modern footballer. Like, there's no place for Ronaldo really.
Well,
like,
who wants him?
It was a bit like
Todd Bailey wanted him at Chelsea.
Yeah,
too, they didn't want to bring him in.
But you were excited when the club re-signed them. It was a bit like New Year's, wasn't it? It was a bit like the countdown. And then the 10-1 is the exciting part. That's when Ronaldo signed. Yeah. And then the Happy New Year is the rest of it. And then you have the come down and slow. It's the 1st of January now. Pint.
Yeah.
It's there's nowhere to go after that. And it, like, even though last season he was still their top scorer, 24 goals in all competitions, 18 in the Premier League, and that was great. But even through all of that, I thought, this isn't right. Yeah. And that included a hat-trick at home to Spurs and a 3-2 win. Some great moments, great goals. But it's like, it just doesn't feel right anymore.
Yeah, and the other thing to say is his statement last night on Instagram was pathetic. Like,
he didn't apologise.
Not one word of apology, but also, like, remember in pre-season, the Rayo Vallecano game in July, like, Ronaldo again left at half-time, walked out of the stadium. Apparently Ten Hag reprimanded him over that and said, don't let this happen again. It's happened again. And the thing about Ten Hag is, and this is why United fans are all lumping rightly on Ten Hag's side, is because, first of all, the team are playing well. Well, they certainly did during the week. But you don't mess with Ten Hag. Like, there were stories from pre-season. I remember there was one club member, and it's covered in the papers today, where he had an issue, a massive fallout with Ten Hag in the United training session. And the next day, it was like nothing had ever happened. That's just what Ten Hag is like. Even in Perth in pre-season, in front of loads of fans at an open training session, Ten Hag gave one of the coaches the 2 fingers and basically said, this isn't set up right, in front of everyone. And he just doesn't care what people think. Whether you're working in the canteen in Old Trafford or you're a Cristiano Ronaldo, you're going to get reprimanded if you step out of line. And that's the thing about that's why Ten Hag is going to win this battle.
Well, yeah, and the club have to take a stance now anyway. That's the thing.
Yeah.
Ronaldo has forced them to take a stance. Either you choose this guy or you choose this guy. And like Roy Keane was talking about it on Monday Night Football, was it last week, where he was saying that, like, Ronaldo is, the club have treated him really badly. But I have to say, I think that's all gone now. He can't detach himself from the responsibility of refusing to come on and walking off the pitch. Like, I think at some point or another.
But he will. I mean, he has a problem. He has a problem with Ten Hag's coaching staff. He's going to have his side to the story. It'll be really interesting to see, like, Ronaldo's biggest fans, like Roy Keane and many others, what they're going to say next time around, because Keane might acknowledge, like, okay, he was wrong to do that, but there will 100% be a but coming, because those type of players, 100%. Like these, like, mentality monsters, as Jurgen Klopp would call them, is like, they're so singular in their vision that they aren't like most people, where there's a lack of self-awareness, which has actually helped to propel them to this insane level of achievement.
That's the thing, the lack of self-awareness. Like, Ronaldo thinks probably in his head, I'll have loads of United fans on my side here. But if you're looking at the papers, like the Ronaldo effect, all the stats, when Ronaldo starts and when he doesn't. I mean, the team runs 10 kilometres less per game when Ronaldo doesn't or does start, and then goals per game, they have fewer points, they have goals against, they press less, possession won per game in the attacking third, high turnovers. Every stat is worse off when Ronaldo starts. So, like, he can't win this. Like, there's no way Ronaldo can win this battle. And even though Anthony Martial is injury prone, the fact that he was dropped him for Chelsea this weekend speaks volumes. 8 months left in his contract. I can't see how he's going to see it out. We kind of allowed the shaking of the head when he came off against Newcastle, because you're kind of thinking, right, well, Ten Hag's excuse was he's a striker, he didn't score, he's going to be shaking his head. That's not why he was shaking his head. But I mean, we'll allow that. But it was what happened against Tottenham is if it was any other player, you'd be calling for head.
Even from a potential suitor's point of view, it's like we knew we were getting this player, like Colm was saying, not really in step with modern football, but. So we can swallow that because he's like one of the greatest players of all time.
Yeah.
And then it's like, okay, well, that's his attitude. So suddenly he's doing his own brand of disservice.
He started talking in the statement on Instagram last night about how he wants to be a leader, and he came back into the club to be a leader to the younger players in the squad. Well, like, what sort of example is that? Is that to Anthony Elanga, for example, didn't look too pleased coming up at the end of the game the other night for whatever reason. I don't know what the situation was there. With players hugging him and Bruno Fernandes talking to him. It's almost like they're kind of learning to be petulant because Ronaldo was there. I'd say Rashford's not happy as well, because he's playing better than Ronaldo at the minute. That's a fact. That he's in the team on merit. But I don't know what he's probably thinking about the World Cup, Ronaldo. He doesn't want to be training with the kids or playing. He won't be playing under 23 games. It won't get to that level. But he needs games before the Portugal World Cup campaign. He's not going to really get them now. Your Europa League games is his only real shout.
I put you on the spot. Where's Cristiano Ronaldo playing his football second half of this season?
Saudi Arabia.
Do you think so? Do you think he'll do that? I don't see that. Why would that in any way interest him? Besides, I understand racking up the goals and being the greatest.
Because he himself, on some level, must be aware that I'm not the player I was.
I think he'll get Champions League football, but with a lower Champions League club, which will be fine by him.
Yeah,
it'll be fine by him as long as he'll
be playing in the United reserves. That's my prediction for the second.
Would you imagine him in the reserves? Would you love a camera on that? Talked about it last night. I fully agree with them.
Fergus Farrell wondering if Ronaldo would agree to walk away without payment for the rest of his contract. It's not like he needs the money. I mean, that's going to happen. And Frank wondering, we'll leave it on this note for the minute. Morning, lads. Colm, do you have a suitcase beside you? Quick dash to a 4-hour queue in Dublin Airport.
Oh, I'm going to Amsterdam next week.
Yeah, I'd bring that
Good
shirt
point,
with
actually.
you,
and,
while you're there, leave it there.
It might do, yeah. My first time.
This
in
is a
Amsterdam.
psychedelic looking shirt. It'll do well over in the.
I would say yours is psychedelic. Mine's more good time.
It is
7:58.
Is it? It's Friday morning. You're watching OTB AM. We'll save the audience from your shirt column for now, Shane. I mean, whenever
sorry,
you want.
Adrian, can you describe the shirts to the podcast?
Yours is a picture of 40 oranges.
Yeah.
And a little green leaf
42.
poking out of it. And it's an eyesore. And Shane's is something I'm pretty sure my mother has a version of that at home.
Curtains,
it's
Granny's curtains,
like the curtains at home. Yeah, I mean I don't know how
to take it off.
It's like
my plan was to take it off.
Faded roses. It's like a zebra pattern.
Yeah.
With a load of faded roses in the front of it.
Shane, he's trying to be insulting, but I actually think he doesn't like both.
That's
my suspicion of it.
He secretly likes them.
That's what I mean. I think he has to feel his persona that he has to criticise.
Yeah.
Go ahead there, Nick.
OTBAM brought to you by with Gillette in association with Movember, effortless shave, magnificent mo. You can sign up or donate now at Movember.com. And here's what's coming up on the show for you this morning. We've got a stacked show between now and 10 o'clock. Willie Maher is standing by, the new Laois hurling manager. We'll get Willie's thoughts on his plans for Laois in just a few moments' time. Ben Jacobs, football writer, we'll be talking to him obviously about Stevie G and a few maybe other bits and pieces besides. We'll let you know what's happening across the back pages after that. Alan Quinlan will talk to us about obviously the Ireland squad this week. Small matter of Leinster Munster at Diviva on Saturday as well, so we'll talk to Quinny about all of that and we'll get him to pick his 15 and subs for the South Africa game from that squad that was named during the week. And after we chatted with Damian Brown last week, and there was a brilliant reaction to what was ultimately a very honest piece from Damian after his 113-day row across the Atlantic. This week we're going to be joined by Fergus Farrell, who you'll remember was with us as well a few months back. Fergus had started off the journey with Damian and then was forced to leave after 13 days. So Fergus is going to join us live in studio at around 9 o'clock this morning. So whatever it is from all of that, and John Giles will see us out this morning as well, whatever it is from all of that, you can feel free to drop us your comments, and for Laddie, Larry and everybody else is interested in it as well, we'll keep you across the cricket as it advances this morning. So that's what's coming up, but I said we'd start with hurling, and that's exactly where we go. We have the Laois hurling manager Willie Maher on the line. Morning, Willie.
Hi guys.
How are you doing? I'm sure you were interested in our chat there about Stevie G and the manager stuff, and hoping your own fate is something dissimilar to that.
At least Stevie G and the rest get well looked after financially, so it's it's something that all managers think about.
Yeah. So you're a few weeks in, and congrats on getting the gig. And we've been wanting to chat to you for a couple of weeks to get a bit of a sense of what you're thinking and where you're going to go with this job. The county final is done in Laois a few weeks now. Is there anything that you've been able to do over the last few weeks to get to grips with the job at hand?
Yeah, just I suppose understand the players that are there, meet as many as players as I can, and I suppose the last 2 weeks has been taken up with phone calls, and I still have a good few to make as regards with panel members with different situations. So yeah, no, really looking forward to getting going. I suppose we're not allowed until the end of November officially go back training, so it's preparation, it's planning, and look, that's stuff I enjoy doing.
So what sort of stuff? What are you doing? What is that?
Well, just literally meeting players, putting programs together, putting a backroom together. I suppose number one. That's the big thing here. Putting a coaching setup in place, organising facilities, organising, I suppose, working with the county board, and just getting used to, I suppose, their ways of work as well. So there's a kind of a lot of little bits and pieces to it, but look, very, very enjoyable stuff, and it's something I suppose I wanted to do for a long time, manage inter-county level, and now I have the opportunity, and I'm delighted to be in Laois.
And you mentioned the backroom staff. You have Dan in.
Dan is in. Dan, look, really, really good coach. As you probably, I suppose, saw from afar and interview him on the show over time. He's a really, really good fella. Very humble, very organised, but a really, really good coach. And I think I think he'll connect well with the Laois players as regards from a coaching perspective. And look, he's done it all in the game, and he's been hugely successful over a long period of time. Involved with Waterford, with Derek going back to 17 as well. And his coaching credentials are high, and I just think he's a really good fella, and I think he'll be a really good fit for the Laois group.
How do you feel, Willie, about switching from the club game to the inter-county game? Because I know even you would have worked with Dan and the Waterford backroom setup across the years, and even with Bennett's Bridge and Kilkenny. But that switch from club to inter-county, especially when you're the main man as yourself, a lot more focus, a lot more attention on you. Like, is that something that you're fully aware of and ready to deal with, or is it something that took a bit of consideration before you said yes?
I think there's always a consideration when you're looking. We see the demands on inter-county teams and inter-county managers as regards the spotlight is constantly on. And look, Laois is a very, very proud hurling county and looking to perform. So people are going to ask questions if it's not done correctly. So everybody has an opinion as well. So like we live in communities where hurling is a really, really big piece of life. And my initial impression of I suppose talking to people, being at the county final, being up around Laois, hurling is a really, really, it's a big part of what they do on a day-to-day basis. So yeah, there's going to be a lot of scrutiny. I suppose I worked with county teams as regards underage minors, 21s with Tipperary back in 12, and going back even to 2010 with Ken Hogan with the Tip under 21s as well. So I suppose I have a good understanding of the inter-county game, albeit not inter-county senior. But look, really looking forward to getting going, and I think it's delighted with the opportunity.
Do you have targets in your mind? I know Laois had they retained their league status in Division 1, but I mean relegation from the Leinster Championship wasn't in the plan for last year. So what's the target? What's the realistic targets? Because we've been chatting to Johnny Pilkington and people within Offaly, for example, over the last few weeks. But when you took the job, like do you have set targets, or is that a dangerous thing to do?
I have set targets, but I'm probably not going to release them on national airwaves that I'm held to that account by. But yeah, no, look, we definitely have targets. I think it's very important after being, I suppose, relegated from the Leinster Championship last year to stabilise in McDonagh, to make sure that we're competitive. It's very, very competitive. I was at the Leinster final last year, which was the McDonagh was the game before with Kerry and Antrim. Very competitive, very enjoyable game, and the standard is really good. So we recognise that that's going to be really difficult but again, something that I'm up for, and something that the players that I've spoken to already are up for, to give that a right go. A lot of success in 19 with Eddie. In the McDonagh, and that gave him a huge platform to, I suppose, ultimately get to a quarter final. So the targets are there. I won't be releasing them quite yet, but I look forward to, I suppose, getting there and really going at those targets and working with the group, because people that commit to inter-county hurling are very, very focused, very they have targets. They're not. It's a huge commitment, as well documented across the last 10 or 12 years where inter-county has gone. So yeah, we have targets. Looking forward to I suppose to going at them and enjoying the process.
How different is it, Willie, just as an extension almost to that, from your time working with Coola, for example, who like year in, year out, have realistic ambitions winning the county, realistic ambitions winning All-Ireland, and it's a different challenge with Laois, it's a different group. How different is it for you in terms of your approach, in terms of the language that you have or the methods that you use, or is it no different at all?
I think it is, because and again it goes back to the personality type of the group. Yes, like the hurler in Dublin is a different person to the hurler in Laois, as opposed to the hurler in South Tip where I'm from. I'm from a very small club, Ballingarry, so I probably understand that need to change approach and to look at the playing resources that are there and make realistic targets to move the group forward. So yeah, look, it's we're not going to be competing with the big boys. We know that, and there's an acceptance of that. But at the same time, we have to become competitive again, and that comes through again getting the structure, getting the planning that I suppose we've been doing for the last 2 or 3 weeks, and we'll continue for the next week or two. Make sure that's right, and that we have realistic goals. We have plans in place that are realistic to the group, and like this is again, it's something that really looking forward to getting onto the training ground, which is I suppose ultimately where a lot of the work is done. Assessing fitness levels, assessing I suppose where the hurling is at, and also I suppose trying to build I suppose on the standards that have been built in Laois over the last couple of years.
I was fascinated to read a stat, Willie, where it was said that of the 16 teams that competed in the Liam McCarthy and Joe McDonough last year, 8 of them, half those teams now are preparing with new managers for this year. Like what does that say? Is that just down to the elite level of pressure and time needed and commitments for intercounty management now? Is it just that there's more turnover naturally in the game, or how do you foresee that?
I think it's a mixture of both. I think it's a pressurized environment, and I don't think there'll ever be a Brian Coley situation again as regards with the longevity that he was in the Kilkenny job for. But it is very intense. It's very enjoyable, but it's very intense, and it's very, I suppose, time. You need a lot of time, and I've been very fortunate with my work and with my family at home as regards that I've been given the opportunity to allow myself to test myself in this environment. But very, very intense environment, and I like that does lead to turnover of people, and people can't give the commitment across a myriad of different reasons over a long period of time. But it's something we all love. It's something that it's innately in us as regards people from hurling communities in the different counties across Ireland, and it's something that I suppose that we all aspire to do. It's so we're really looking forward to it, I suppose, is the bottom line. But time commitments are huge in it.
Yeah, I know Kieran Whelan was talking during the week about it. The demands on intercounty managers now have been out of control almost. We'll ask you about that in a year's time, maybe when you've a bit of experience under your belt at that level. What you mentioned Dan earlier on, and he was, I think you said he was really good, a really good coach on the training pitch. What is he? What sort of stuff is he doing?
Well, just the basic, I suppose, hurling, I suppose, skills of the player. So, like, it's a pillar of what we want to do in Laois across. We'll say obviously get our fitness right, but get our actual touch hurling right. Get our ball to hand. Get our striking. Get our just that I suppose that. The very basic, going back, I saw an article from Eamon O'Shea as regards the former Tip coach yesterday in the Examiner, and he was talking about that just the striking of the ball, that catching of the ball, all the kind of the real basic skills and the importance of them that are sometimes probably neglected to an extent, where in a world of again sports science and fitness and the gym, sometimes the actual hurling and breaking down of the skills. So I suppose to answer your question, Dan is very good at breaking down those skills and making players technically better before you can get into the strategy of how you're going to play, but just get the hurling up, and Dan is exceptional at that. And then again, he has the added advantage of being such a larger than life type character as regards he's 45 years of age, he's gymming every day, he's hurling every day, like he lives it as well. So I think players will connect with that, and I'm just delighted he's coming with me, because I think it's something that will excite the Laois players and the Laois public, and I hope it'll bring us success.
You'll have worked with a number of top level managers, Willie, over the years. Derek McGrath in the Waterford situation, and even Nicky English when you're going back a few more years as well. Like
it's going back a good while now.
A good while, yeah. But would you the kind of, are you a student of the game where you're kind of picking up little tips and bits across the years from different managers, or are you very much a person who just wants to focus on your own style, or are you kind of the person that picks up little bits along the way?
I think your own style develops from experiences and look, I love sport. I love hurling as regards. So I suppose from a hurling perspective, I've been going to matches since I was a chap with my dad. And I suppose getting that insight from as a young lad, going to games, playing games. I suppose I came through the whole Tipperary system from 14 right up, and was fortunate to I suppose be managed and be coached by lots of different characters and great players and great managers. So yeah, I think look, life is about experiences, and I think it's about learning from everything. Very fortunate. Again, going back to, I suppose, my own playing career ended through injury when I was younger, and I was exposed to people like Davy Billings in UCD, and so I was blessed, I suppose, when I reflect on it, and lots of different people back over the years. I coached the Dublin Miners in 2008 with Shea Boland, just learning consistently as I go. So yeah, yes, I am a student of the game. I love going to games. I love going to Croke Park, Thurles, wherever it is. But I also, I suppose, expose myself to other sports and have met a lot of, I suppose, different people over the years to take little pieces of to help me develop my style.
Am I right in saying you would have played, Willie, with Henry Shefflin back in your St. Kieran's college days?
Yeah, Henry was my class in school. Yeah, great. Obviously, the career Henry had is testament to the person he is. Hugely driven and competitive, and I suppose being in that Kieran's environment as well helped me. I suppose develop a different area of myself. Yeah, so Henry was in my class. Eddie was in my class as well. Derek Ling was in my class, was the New Kilkenny manager. So it's there was a lot of us, I suppose, that have come through the coaching ranks now. That were in that Kieran system going back to the day. But yeah, again, experiences are fantastic, and I was very fortunate enough to have those experiences with those I suppose elite players and now managers.
I suppose I asked because we had or Eddie Brennan was on off the ball during the week, and Eddie was really very much, and he did it on Twitter as well, putting himself out there. I think he named TJ Reid as the greatest of all time, which got a bit of reaction and certainly caused a bit of controversy as well. But you'll have had a bit of experience, as you said, playing with Henry and players like that and of that ilk. But who would you, if you had to pick someone as the greatest of all time at this very moment? I know TJ Reid, there's a bit of recency bias from some quarters with that one, but who would you have top of the pile?
Yeah, it's as a tip man, it's not a great thing to be naming Kilkenny players as great players of all time, but I was actually at the county final on Sunday there in Kilkenny, and like TJ Reid was just absolutely immense, and I think he's definitely up there. I'm not going to give you an answer, but at the same time, I think you look at Henry, what he did in the game. You look at our own Kelly and Tipperary. You look at some Joe Canning. We were absolutely blessed in the era that we're living with the players that we've been exposed to as regards as elite players. And look, again, I think Henry or TJ is definitely up there. Look, I suppose I like DJ Carey back in the day when John Lahey, they were, I suppose, guys that I would have grown up watching, and so I'm going to go with a Tipperary man. It's either John Lahey or Owen Kelly, I think.
Mm-hmm. What's the you mentioned the backroom staff? That's a thankless task, by the way. There's an awful question for Shane to put you on Friday morning. What you mentioned the backroom staff? Will you bring in somebody local, or what are you thinking?
Yeah, I've Eamon Jackman. Eamon is a Ballinkill man, Laois player, I suppose, over a 10-year period. He's the vice principal here in the Loretto in Kilkenny. So he's he's a very, very able fella and a really, really good coach. So look, I'm delighted he's on board as well. I have a guy, Cahill Murta. He's an S&C. He's currently with the Munster Academy at the moment, so he's going to come on board with us as well. And I have Sean Flynn, I suppose, the analyst that was with Tipperary in 19. Sean is going to be the analyst stroke coach with us as well. So look, it's come together. I've one or two more positions to fill in the next while, but it's just, I suppose, we have our main coaching team at the moment, and we're looking forward to getting going at the end of November.
Can I just ask you one, Willie, that struck me during the week, and myself and Adrian were chatting before the show this morning about news from the GEA, talking about GEA helmets and the quality of them earlier this week. So the Competition and Consumer Protection Commission and the GEA essentially urging people buying hurling helmets to make sure they're up to scratch, provide the protection required. Sounds like obvious enough stuff, but both bodies made aware of poorer quality helmets being sold online at the minute. Maybe for people unfamiliar with your own story and what happened to yourself and the injury, the horrific injury back in February of 2002, 20 years ago, you might just remind people of that, and because I know you're someone who's spoken out quite eloquently in the past as well about the importance of helmets and proper player safety in the game.
Yeah, no, I suppose my own story, and it just happened. I would have always worn my helmet, I suppose, to caveat that in the story. But I was in UCD 20 years ago, February, and I didn't have my helmet in the car, and I went training, and I got a belt in the eye, and it finished my playing career at the time. So that was kind of it was a. You don't need further, I suppose, vindication of the importance of helmets and good quality helmets. So yeah, that's something that's always, I suppose, close to my heart with the experience that I've had, and it's look. I think on the main, and I saw the story during the week on the quality of the poor quality of helmets. On the main, I think the GA have done a fantastic job over the last 20 years. Like when you see where the game has come, re-safety and re-helmets and like no helmets, I suppose, going back 20 years ago, or the choice of them. So I think, look, they've done a really, really good job. It is worrying, I suppose, that there is products in the market that are not of a standard. So I suppose, coming from where I come from, I think it's important the GA nail that now.
Yeah, well, look, there's lots of nice messages coming in for you, Willie. Good catching up with you. P, well, here, one of them I'll read out to you. Willie Maher is an impressive guy. Best of luck to him in Laois, and we'll all say, all of us, best of luck with the gig. Thanks, Willie, for joining us this morning.
Appreciate the chat, lads. Thanks a million.
Thanks a lot, Willie Maher on the line there, the new Laois manager. And we can reveal, Shane, that Ireland have beaten the West Indies. An unbelievable win, 9 wickets. They really
brilliant.
Nailed it and qualified for the Super 12s. What a performance from Ireland this morning, because it was a reasonable task of 146 for 5 that they've been set by the West Indies a little bit earlier in the day, but they've responded in some style to win by 9 wickets. They had, I think, just under 3 overs to play and got past the mark, 150 for 1, which by my reckoning there must have been 4 with the final ball. It was Paul Sterling and Lorcan Tucker who had done a lot of the heavy lifting at the crease. Sterling 66 not out, Tucker 45 not out, and before that Balbirnie had been bowled for 37. So that is quite the response and quite an impressive win for Ireland, and they have qualified. That's incredible. It's
a hammering as well, to win by 9 wickets. And like we were on air the other morning when Ireland beat Scotland, and look, we'll enjoy beating Scotland. We beat them in the women's game as well, so it's kind of, they're probably getting a little bit sick of us in the sporting sense. But then you kind of had seen a few days previous Scotland had beaten the West Indies, so you're starting to think, Jesus, Ireland could really push on here. There's always the fear that going into the West Indies game, when that is in the back of your head, that okay, Scotland beat them, so we can beat them, that Ireland mightn't be able to deliver. But Jesus, they've delivered in spades this morning. That's an incredible result. So yeah, it's been a good. It feels like it's been a good couple of weeks for Irish sport. So long may that continue. Rory McIlroy is going to win this weekend and top it all off as well. It's going to continue on this rolling snowball of positive Irish sporting stories. You'd hope.
Carl Doherty, and there's been loads of people excited in our YouTube comments about the cricket this morning, so fair play, and do keep the comments coming in now. They've actually got over the line. It's brilliant stuff, and we'll have more reaction to that as the morning advances as well. Carl Doherty, by the way, is in touch to say that Adrian in the iron sweater looks like he's brought his 2 young lads to work and is trying to hide them from his workmates.
So you're the one getting the abuse for the clothes. I love it.
I'm not, I mean, I don't know. Righto, we have loads to come. It is 8:19 on this Friday morning, wherever it is you are at this morning. A very good morning to you, and I hope you're enjoying what we've had for you so far. We still have a stacked show for you to come. OTBAM brought to you with Gillette in association with Movember. Effortless shave, magnificent mo, and you can sign up or donate now at Movember.com. We've Alan Quinlan to come on the rugby. We've Fergus Farrell on the rowing exploits of himself and Damian Brown, and we're going to be back after the break with the CBS Sports Golazos Ben Jacobs to give us more on the Aston Villa decision to sack Stephen Gerrard as manager. First of all, Nathan Murphy in conversation with Nathan Collins on the show last night.
From the international point of view, what was the WhatsApp like on the Sunday morning when the draw has been made and it was France, the Netherlands, Greece in the draw for Euro 2024?
It was all right. First text was from my brother. He just put laugh and face with a picture of the group. Well, listen, when I seen it, I was delighted. I was buzzing by it. Honestly, it was like what game? Like the game when I'm from a kid, you see like like Shane Long's goal against Germany at the Aviva and stuff like that, and you're just thinking, listen, if we can create more memories like that, it's unbelievable, and that's what I want. I want to play against the best. I want to test myself. I want to bring the best here to this to the Aviva and see what they're like against our fans. It's something I think we can all look forward to. I think it's something unbelievable. And listen, I don't see why we can't do it, and I don't see why we can't make an upset. And if we do, the story behind it's going to be unbelievable.
Yeah, it certainly will. It's depressing when you say as a kid, Shane Long, it feels like it was just yesterday, but you were probably only 13 or 14 at the time, and life moves pretty quickly. You're going to face Erling Haaland again next month in that match against Norway. You got a taste of it. Of all the players you've gone up against over the past year then in Premier League football, who are the strikers that you're learning most from, that afterwards you might watch back and go, okay, his movement, I need to learn from that, I need to react to that?
Fair. I think in the Premier League, I think every player is so different. You come up against players that don't do a lot all game, but they score 3 goals. Or you come up against players that do so much for the team, but they don't have the end product to show it, but they've done so much for the team to get a result. So I think every game's different. I think you have to look at analysis every game. You see a player like Harry Kane and his movement off the ball. He comes in short, he'll go in behind. He has everything to his game, so you have to be aware of that. And then you have people like Haaland, who's so direct, who's so strong. You have to adapt yourself to that game. But I just think every game you have to do your analysis. Every game you have to learn about the player, and you have to change your game. There's no one way of playing football anymore. I think you have to adapt to the style of play to the other people.
OTB Sports Rugby.
I'm looking at a lot of the comments online from Munster fans, and I think there's a lot of worry and concern now. This is a really negative one, and it was as bad probably performances as we've seen in a long, long time.
Subscribe to the rugby stream on the OTB Sports app now.
OTB AM with Gillette in association with Movember. Effortless shave, magnificent Mo.
Yeah, very welcome back to OTB AM on this Friday morning, 21 minutes past 8 with you, myself and Adrian. We were chatting about the Steven Gerrard news. Going to elaborate on that a bit more now as well with Ben Jacobs, the football writer with CBS Sports Golazo. Morning, Ben. How are things?
Good morning. I'm good. How are you?
Very good. Keeping well. You pointed out on Twitter yesterday a couple of quotes. Liz Truss, I'm a fighter, not a quitter. And then Steven Gerrard, I'm a fighter. I will never, ever quit anything. So 24 hours is a long time in politics, but it also is in football, it appears.
Yeah, usually when a manager says that they are a fighter, not a quitter, the writing can be on the wall. And unfortunately for Steven Gerrard, that was the case. And it's no real surprise because the Villa hierarchy have been planning for this contingency for quite a while. Just 9 points from 11 games. And I think that the mid-season World Cup is making a lot of clubs in this position quite jittery because they want to make the change sooner rather than later to allow any new manager coming in to have a few games before the break. And then, of course, that gap, which is beneficial in some respects, particularly building up to the window. But if you're a bigger club and you've got all the players away on international duty, that break doesn't necessarily give the manager too much time to bed in. And then if you are World Cup players, you may have fatigue and you could be rested in those first few games after the World Cup. And I think that's why we're seeing such a managerial merry-go-round now so early in the season. And I don't think that Steven Gerrard can have too many complaints because Aston Villa have looked a little bit toothless at times. And Gerrard had obviously done very well up in Scotland and had an immediate impact as well. But Villa just haven't progressed there exactly where they were when he joined. They're teetering with relegation. And Gerrard had said in the build-up to the game last night against Fulham that they had to get a result, that he knew that it was a big week. And I think that was a hint to effectively say that he had to win that game or at least put in a quality performance. And it was exactly the opposite. They were second best in the first half, and then the red card didn't help them. And they obviously end up losing by 3-0. And the only harsh thing in terms of the sacking, I don't really understand why you had a scenario where Gerrard actually did his post-match interview and about 25 minutes later was sacked, and then he had to go back on the team bus with his former employer only to say his goodbyes when the bus got back at the training ground. And I think that it would have been perhaps slightly more professional on Villa's part to at least leave it until first thing this morning in order to announce it. But this is football, and the board had already made up their mind and they wanted to communicate that as soon as possible.
Yeah, it was all a bit strange after the match, and it happened quite quickly, although Villa fans, I'm sure a lot of them will be happy that it happened quickly. We mentioned earlier as well, Ben, like the brevity of the statement was quite notable. Club spokesman was quoted, not any names, but like, will there be calls now for Christian Perslow and for Johan Lange to take some of the brunt of this? Will there be call for more heads, or would that be a surprising thing at this stage to see anyone else fall?
Well, I think that's very logical, isn't it? That some of the accountability has to be on those that employed Steven Gerrard. But how often do we see that in football? Nottingham Forest is the only recent example that I can think of where, after a very poor transfer window, in the sense that they haven't got the points that they would have liked, but a good transfer window in the sense that they brought in a whole flux of players. There was debate after the Nottingham Forest loss to Leicester as to whether Steve Cooper's head will roll, and Nottingham Forest did the opposite. They rewarded him with a new contract, and a couple of the executives on the recruitment side ended up being the ones that go. But I think with Aston Villa, the board are all on the same page. They're very ambitious, and rather than rolling executive heads, they plan on spending a lot of money and being as ambitious as they can with Gerrard's replacement, in the hope, probably, yes, of saving their own jobs in many respects. But I don't think that Villa will let too many more, if anybody, at a senior level go. It's all being pinned on Steven Gerrard. I don't think it's quite a case of scapegoating Steven Gerrard. He definitely has to take a large proportion of the blame, but fundamentally football clubs work in unity, and good ones should have some synergy and some shared accountability in both the decisions they make in recruitment and how the team performs on the field. But you can't ultimately sack a player for a bad result, and you don't usually sack an executive for a bad result, and that's why the brunt of the responsibility falls on the manager. And in that respect, you feel a bit sorry for Steven Gerrard, because every manager will say, if I had a bit more time, if I had a bit more luck. And you look, say, at Aston Villa and that game against Chelsea, and they were brilliant, and somehow they lost the game largely because of the performance of Kepa. And a manager like Gerrard can look at that type of game in retrospect and see the potential and believe that if he had a few more weeks, a few more months, he could have turned things around. But ultimately, there's a lot of quality managers on the market, and Aston Villa have chosen to move swiftly. And as I said before, I think a big part of that is also down to a mid-season World Cup, and clubs that feel they're moving in the wrong direction, heading the halfway point of the season, feeling that necessity to move now rather than wait.
And yet, for all that, Ben, like, it does feel as if the brand Gerrard is at an all-time low, obviously, and every time he sort of spoke, post-match interviews or whatever, it didn't feel as if he was really doing himself any favours. Where do you think is the future for Stevie G now? Is this a fatal blow to his managerial career?
I don't think it's a fatal blow, but it's just that classic proof that moving from a great club like Rangers into the Premier League can come with a baptism of fire. There's more pressure, there's higher quality, you get punished for your mistakes. But also tactically, I think that he was just outmaneuvered on a number of different occasions, and there's no time in the Premier League to learn on the job. And I'm not saying that Steven Gerrard is a total rookie, but you're not afforded that ability to try things and learn and admit you make a mistake because of the scrutiny from the fan base and the fact that the penalty of relegation or even being there or thereabouts is so high. And his game management, for me, got found out. So you need more than one plan in the Premier League. Graham Potter's great at that. You need to be able to adapt to see out games, and you need to work out how to motivate players. And if you're a quality player like Gerrard was, that's one thing, but sometimes you can be blinkered in many ways because you're used to doing the game in a certain way from a certain position at a certain level. And you have to realise that not every player has your talent, even in the Premier League, in the case of Gerrard. But also, you have to be able to motivate those players to change the game and tactics. And I think Gerrard's subs let him down at times. His game management let him down at times. And the team were just far too predictable. Whereas if you look at Lampard at Everton, who's also come in for criticism, he's been able to adapt a little bit more. So what would make sense for Steven Gerrard is to take a little period out of the game to assess and learn and watch back on the tapes and work out how he needs to develop and seek advice from some seniors in the game. But there'll be jobs out there for sure, whether in the Championship or even an assistant role. So let's see what happens with England, for example. He's never going to get the England job, but if Gareth Southgate leaves, who comes in? And then is that the kind of rebuilding for him as a number two or as an assistant? And that can be very helpful as well, to not be the number one, but to go into a big club as a number two for a little bit, because then there's way less pressure, but you're learning from the best, you're seeing it from the best. And then at that point, you may find another opportunity to transition back. But because of his name as a player because of his pedigree, because of also what he did at Rangers. I don't think he'll be short of job offers, but I don't see his next role being anywhere close to the Premier League.
That's interesting, because we were chatting about that earlier on, about what the next step for him might be and whether he might do an assistant thing. Are we overstating his ego almost to suggest that the number 2 thing wouldn't be, that he might actually be up for that?
It depends where, because if you're offered a number 2 at an elite level club playing Champions League or ultimately internationally, then first and foremost, he may not see that as a significant step down, more as a short-term learning. And then was it an international job? And we're speculating, of course, Gareth Southgate is ultimately preparing for Qatar, and there's no absolute indication that he's going yet. But if that hypothetical materialised, then you've got the ability usually in that context to take another job at the same time and actually balance the international with the domestic. So you're absolutely right to point out that Gerrard has full belief and confidence in himself. So we'll be applying in terms of next managerial gigs for a managerial position at the highest level he thinks he can get. But at the moment, I don't see that being any higher than the Championship. And that's why if a big club came calling and he had the opportunity to learn and get back into the game quickly, it just might be something that he considers. And it is a step down if you talk about it in terms of hierarchy, but it could well be exactly what he needs to learn from a manager with a little bit less pressure on him.
You mentioned Frank Lampard there a minute ago, Ben, and there are going to be obvious parallels made between Lampard and Gerrard in terms of their managerial career, given that their playing careers bounced off each other so much. Like Lampard strikes me as someone who fully got invested in the Everton culture and was at one with the fans in many ways, and still is, and has completely gone hell for leather into that job. But is that something that Gerrard has learned to his detriment now, that there never really was, or never seemed to be, at least from the outset, that relationship with the Villa fans? He never seemed to really get close to them.
Yeah, and I think the difference is that at Everton, it's difficult circumstances. The club may well be being sold. They've had financial woes. So Lampard's really had to dig deep. And the only way of unifying that team and moving them in the right direction is to get invested within the culture. And I think that he's proving, Lampard, that he has that tactical intelligence that maybe at times Gerrard has lacked, certainly at Aston Villa, less so at Rangers. Whereas with Gerrard, he never quite warmed the fan base. And I think that the board at Aston Villa are more ambitious at the moment anyway than Everton's board. For Everton, they're just desperately trying to stabilise for now. And then if a new owner comes in, let's see how they develop. But Aston Villa's board see themselves as a sleeping giant right now. They're prepared to spend big, and they're prepared to throw a lot of money at their managers. So Gerrard, in retrospect, was quite a risky name, despite the fact that he was very well known and did excellent at Rangers. He was thrown into Premier League football, and I think the fan base always had a few reservations about that, which means that the style of football became very important. And as soon as things turned against Gerrard results-wise, you had the fan base immediately on his back. And Gerrard, as an icon, as a player, and at Rangers, who have got a phenomenal fan base, and naturally they had success as well, I don't think he'd ever really dealt with that. Maybe in his playing career after the slip, but even then that was more from away fans than Liverpool fans. So imagine as a player, you've always been a kind of hero. People have always warmed to you for England, domestically at Liverpool, and then at Rangers it had gone very well indeed as well. So then you come into Aston Villa and results don't go your way, and suddenly the mood changes and you're not used to that and you can't influence that as a player might. And I just think that Gerrard got a little agitated by that pressure, and it affected his man management and his decision making, from what I hear. And ultimately he got found out. And we want young managers to do well, and we want every manager to be given a little bit of time, which from a Leicester point of view, it's great to see Brendan Rodgers at least having those games and seemingly turning things around. But ultimately, football's a cutthroat business, and Villa are heading in the wrong direction. And that's why I think the writing's been on the wall for quite some time. And it will be the right call, because if Villa had stuck with Gerrard for any longer, they could easily have entered into that World Cup break in the bottom three. Yep, good stuff, Ben. Just in a word, who's taking over? Who's going to take over? Pochettino's been mentioned. Too early to say. Pochettino's been mentioned, like you say, so that is one possibility, but they'll have to be very ambitious and offer him phenomenal terms. I think Pochettino prefers to bide his time, to be honest with you, and see what else becomes available. Unai Emery is in the mix. People are mentioning Michael Beale, but it's going to be quite tough for him to take the Villa job, having explained why he wouldn't take the Wolves job because of his loyalty to QPR. If a few days later he suddenly joins Aston Villa, then that's not going to be a good look for him. So it might be quite difficult there as well. Sean Dyche will be linked as well. And then two outsiders just to keep an eye on: Bielsa, former Leeds manager, and AVB too. AVB is a very distant candidate. I don't think Villa are looking at him, but he's very interested in Villa because I understand he still thinks he's got something to prove in the Premier League. But it's an open race at the moment. But one thing I do know is that a lot of the legwork behind formulating a shortlist and touting candidates had been done weeks ago, which means the Villa board are not starting from now in terms of their recruitment. They have been working on this for a number of weeks.
Great stuff, Ben. Thanks a million. As always, Ben Jacobs there, CBS Sports, Golazo. Interesting stuff in Gerrard. Andre Viash Boas, that's a left field shout.
Yeah. Probably not the worst. Some of the names that have been touted around, like Thomas Tuchel and Pochettino, I just can't see it. But we'll see how all that plays out. A reminder, in case you've just joined us, or in case you're just up, you haven't seen it, Ireland have qualified for the T20 World Cup, the Super 12s. It's an unbelievable achievement, and we're going to talk to Nathan Johns at the Irish Times in a couple of moments' time about all of that. And there's so much to talk about. Quite the stand for Ireland. We'll get into all of that in a few moments' time. A few comments coming in as well. Sean Dyche is the money bet, says JP Wright. Good morning to you, JP. It does feel like a hand and glove fit, doesn't it? Like when we talk about that thing earlier on about having somebody to come in and get the players behind you and be that voice early on.
4-4-2, Watkins and Ings up front, but he's a better squad than he had at Burnley. So Dyche would clearly take the job, you'd imagine. He's been out of the game for a bit of time now, so it depends on if Villa want him. Those left field shouts, Tuchel and Poch, they're not going to take the job. I'd be shocked. And he's as low as 4-7 with some of the bookies. Is Pochettino, and Dyche seems to be second favourite with a lot of people. So Dyche would be my pick, realistic pick. I would love from the outset to see Pochettino over a relegation team.
Cricket time. I mentioned Ireland are off to Australia. They've qualified for the T20 World Cup with a 9-innings win over West Indies in Hobart this morning. It's an absolute hammering. West Indies, twice champions, of course. Delighted to say Nathan Johns of the Irish Times has been keeping an eye on it and joins us on the line. Morning, Nathan.
Morning, how you doing? Or good afternoon, good evening from here.
Good. You're in Hobart, are you?
Yeah, I'm over here. I'm currently sat in the underbelly of the car park waiting on a press conference. But yeah, as you said, massive 9-wicket win there for Ireland. They qualify for the Super 12. Super 12s of the competition. First time they've done it since 2009. It's up there with the best wins they've had at World Cups for sure. Unbelievable.
If you need to run at any point, let us know. I know you're trying to get into the press conference there, so just shout. We're fine with that. But we will get a bit of a sense. What was the so in terms of how they managed the game this morning? They obviously managed the West Indies innings very well earlier.
Yeah, they did. They won on Wednesday as well, which, they lost the first game on Monday against Zimbabwe, beat Scotland on Wednesday. They needed to win the last two games, Wednesday and today, to go through. Wednesday was a bit of a, get out of jail free card. They had one massive partnership at the end after performing pretty averagely up until that point. Today was completely different, complete performance with the ball. It's much harder bowling first in Hobart. The results tell you that. But they bowled supremely. Gareth Delaney was excellent. His leg spin, 3 wickets, only cost 16 runs. And in reply, once they got out there, they were only chasing 150, very low total at this ground, and West Indies were never in it really. Balju Balbirnie and Paul Sterling, the two of their best batters, both were excellent. Paul Sterling, who's one of Ireland's best ever, probably. He's been struggling for form of late, but he passed his half century and was unbeaten at the end. And to lose only 1 wicket against a side like the West Indies is fantastic.
Yeah, he's going to get a lot of the plaudits, isn't he, Paul Sterling? Like another half century up, and the stand when you needed him, he was there. You said about maybe recent form not been great, but when he was needed, there he was.
Yeah, 2022 has probably been one of the worst years of his career. Actually, he had 100 in the 50 over format, but in terms of the shortest, 2020, which is where he excels more often than not, he's really struggled. So for him to come up at the end, look, Ireland needed their big talisman on a day like today, and they got him. on that note, I do think I actually have to run. The captain is just walking in front of me here. I think I better go off the top.
Good man. Well done. Congrats to everybody out there. Nathan Johns, the Irish Times. Thanks a million for jumping on the line there. Brief, but great to get a bit of a sense actually from Hobart.
Yeah.
As to, exactly what had gone on.
I think you have to remember as well, West Indies, even though they lost to Scotland, they're to the 2016 T20 champions, World Cup champions. So it's not like it's that long ago that they were top of the world, which puts it into context. What an achievement. And 2009 seems like a long time ago. But I mean, to have done it again, and people like Paul Sterling at the forefront of it as well, class to see. And
absolute class.
Good news to wake up to for a lot of people this morning.
Exactly, and I'm sure we'll have more reaction over the course of the day as well, and into the show this evening. So stay tuned for all of that. Stay tuned too, because we're still going to speak with Alan Quinlan in just a little bit. We'll get his thoughts on that Ireland squad, obviously, that's been named for the Novembers, that was named during the week. We'll get his 15 and subs, hopefully, and chat to Quinny generally about that. Obviously, the small matter of Leinster Munster as well, Shane, at the Aviva tomorrow. So very much looking forward to that. I have the two kids booked in. The three of us are heading down. We're I think 2 or 3 rows back from the front.
Heading down, like the Munster fans are heading down. They're heading down the road. You just have to roll into
head over the road.
Yeah.
I must say, I'm very much looking forward to it.
Decent crowd as well.
There'll be 45,000 at it.
That's not bad.
Yeah,
that's not bad in the Aviva. Now a lot of Munster fans, and that's considering a lot of Munster fans don't travel anymore because of the expense for one, and trying to get accommodation in Dublin, especially for a kick-off at 5:15, 5:30. So yeah, I don't know what way this is going to go for Munster. The pressure is probably on Leinster more so, but I mean, they need a result.
I don't know about that. I don't know. The only pressures on Leinster is the fact that they're at home. Maybe they've had a better start to the season, and they've got through tighter games when it just hasn't been going their way. Like, there is a huge amount of pressure on Munster. Having said that, obviously the win last weekend I think will definitely help. That will take a bit of the heat off them, because actually, there isn't an expectancy that Munster will win this game. That's the reality. Not a great news flash, but I think when you weigh everything up, I mean, I know that look, Munster are just off the back of a big win. There is a case here, and I'm definitely going to be asking Quinny about it, that there is a case here that Munster can pull off an upset.
Is this Leinster Q-tourism here?
No, it's not at all. It's like, it's Munster. I think Munster fans, the optimistic Munster fans, will look at the game against the Bulls as a potential turning point in the season.
Yeah.
That could be the landmark moment, and we'll see. Look at the one caveat to suggesting that Munster might actually win the game tomorrow would be the amount of injuries that they have, and there's still a bit of uncertainty as to exactly who will be playing, so that will definitely help dictate some of that. Colm has informed me in the meantime that he's going as well, himself and his dad, so I think everybody will just be hopeful that at the very least, even if he ends up wearing a Munster shirt, we won't hold that against him. He's not wearing that monstrosity.
Fair play. You have to wear it. And that's the other thing. Fiona Hayes, listening to Wednesday Night Rugby last night, actually probably filled a lot of people and Munster fans with a little bit of confidence. Now, she's optimistic about Munster's chances most of the time, and rightly so. But she kind of pointed towards ways in which Leinster can be got at, but remains to be seen. You'd like to see a tight game, and it won't be a consolation to Munster fans, but even if they could make it a tight game, get a losing bonus point maybe. I know that's a horrible thing to say, because Munster fans are like, no, have to win the game, but that would be not a bad thing given Leicester's dominance in recent years in this derby.
Loads of comments coming in about Stevie G. Where was this one now? Big Sam assert, says Gerrard Lynch.
He's down the road. Like, I was looking at the odds there. Big Sam is down at he's 66 to 1 shot. Like, he's alongside Steve Bruce. He's Roy Keane is actually 50s. So I mean, it's not going to happen. Big Sam. The
Villa ownership has too many notions to hire Dyche. Was an interesting point from C. Bracken.
They think they're too big.
Yeah.
Lads, the European Cup wins were a long time ago. Dyche is the man to keep you in the Premier League, and that's the most important thing.
Right, here's what's happening across the back page. It's almost 9:15. We'll have Alan Quinlan stand by in a couple of moments' time to talk us about all that great rugby stuff. But the Irish Daily Mail to begin with, you can see obviously a very glum looking. It's an awful photograph. He's been captured at a brutal moment, and he must have known what was in the post. Gerrard on the brink was the reporting there. Obviously, it happened very late last night to catch some of the papers this morning. Ronaldo refused to play, and there's more details inside there, obviously, about the continuing fallout of the biggest man-child in sport and his brat behaviour.
Fair to say that photo of Gerrard won't be on his LinkedIn profile, I don't think. So there's better.
He's updating it this morning. All the little courses he's been doing over the last couple of years to better himself, as he's kind of linking in with a lot of people to.
Of course.
Hey, look, I'm over here. I'm available. What's you put a strap on your LinkedIn page to say open for work? Is that
you get endorsed. So Christian Perslow endorsed Stephen Gerrard for.
Jesus, I think
no,
the statement last night suggests whatever the opposite of endorsing. Leicester find form to move off the bottom. This was the 2-0 win over Leeds last night. More reporting inside there as well. And Lisa Fallon's thoughts on the draw for the Women's World Cup, which will take place in the morning. Basically, by 9 o'clock in the morning, this is everything you need to know. By 9 o'clock in the morning, we'll have all details of who we're playing, mostly barring the sort of weird repechages that'll be happening. But who will be playing, where we'll be playing, what times we'll be playing, so people can start to plan, jump on the... if you're planning to get out there, I'd suggest tomorrow morning is probably not the worst time that you could...
book the flights and the accommodation.
Ronan O'Gara is in the Examiner this morning. What's the goal in life? To get the best out of yourself. It's a very interesting read, I must say, as it always is, this morning, where he's reflecting on a training ground spat that he had with Teddy Thomas after their loss to Bayonne last weekend, and he was saying that he expects more out of him, and they had a bit of an exchange of views by all accounts, and he brings a bit more clarity to exactly why that's not not the biggest news flash that these things happen in the training ground, and he's legitimate to call his player to account.
Refreshing to see a manager coming out and admitting to it, because sometimes you hear these leaks and it's not as good as the manager getting out in front of it and saying, look, we had a spat, it's history now, we kissed and made up with Teddy Thomas. So yeah, always a great read from Rog, and it's fascinating to get an insight from an elite level dressing room as well, like that. So great stuff.
Okay, speaking of great stuff, Alan Quinlan, good morning to you.
Morning, lads. How are you?
Flying it. How are you keeping? Delighted to see Stevie G, one of your former heroes, get the boot this morning, Quinny.
You're delighted, or I'm delighted?
Are you delighted?
I'm disappointed. I'm disappointed because I met him a few times, and he was absolutely lovely. And obviously, big Liverpool fan. So is my son. So we met him in Portugal a few years ago as well, and he brought my son out onto the field with him when he was with Rangers. Now that was the downside maybe at the time. We wouldn't be Rangers fans, but anyway, he was lovely. So obviously he was a Liverpool legend. So I'm a bit disappointed for him, but that's the nature of the business at the moment. When I saw the result last night, I thought that's it, and obviously it was for but it's a cutthroat business.
We've tasked you, I accept, late in the day with picking your 15 and subs from the squad that was named during the week. Maybe a good way to sort of pick through the selections that Andy Farrell and his backroom staff have gone with. So, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, look, it's obviously for South Africa, there's some calls that maybe there should be a bit of mixing and matching here with the selection, but I think you've got to try and win these games as well, and I think there will be obviously some tweaks and changes for Fiji and maybe even Australia, but I think Ireland have to get a start as strong as they possibly can. There's a lot of injuries and some doubts about some of the players, but it kind of self-explanatory, most of it picks itself, well, nearly the whole team. Andrew Porter, James Sheehan, Tyke Furlong, James Ryan, Tyke Byrne, O'Mahony at 6, Doris 8, Van der Fleer 7. So that's the forward pack that would have started that third test in New Zealand. Maybe the second one as well, if I'm a mistake. Yeah, I think, look, it's going to be a very physical game, obviously, and you don't have a lot of time together in camp, preparing and trying to get everyone back up to speed. So they're the ones who perform really well.
Who did you go for the second row, Quinny? Sorry.
James Ryan and Tyke Byrne.
Yeah.
Well, there's no Henderson.
Needs must.
Obviously. Yeah, obviously this, Ryan Baird is back in the squad. He was in New Zealand as well and putting a bit of pressure on there. He's still a young player. Kieran Treadwell did really well off the bench in New Zealand. So
who are you taking as cover there? Who's your bench cover for the second row?
Well, I think again I'm going with what happened in New Zealand, and Treadwell came off the bench there. There's an argument to put a Joe McCarthy in there. Thomas Ahern's on the A squad. They did really well in South Africa, both those guys. And it's an obvious area of concern that gap is kind of closed with the seasoned internationals of Byrne, Ryan, Henderson. We need more depth there. We need more options there. So, Treadwell did really well off the bench again, and he has a knock. So who knows how fit and how well he'll be. Obviously, they're picked, so the medical medical reports on some of these guys that are in the squad that they will make it. Then in the backs, Gibson Park, Sexton. I thought about this long and hard as regards putting making a change. It's obviously Bundyaki is out, but Stuart McCluskey is someone who's been playing outstandingly well for Ulster. I'm delighted he's in the squad. I think he will feature. He'll be pretty close. But obviously Henshaw and Ringrose, again, they know each other inside out, and they're top quality internationals. So I think that's who I'd start in the centres.
Ringrose is man of the match every other game at the minute.
Yeah, but just every time Henshaw plays, even he doesn't drop his standard as regards commitment and his ability to make things happen. He's an incredibly competitive player and top class international. I think full back. Then
before you go there, who are you putting on the bench as cover at 10 and 9?
Who am I putting on the bench at 10 and 9? I'm saying Craig Casey. Conor Murray obviously is, you talk about picking players for different games. Maybe he would be the one that would be suited best as regards his physical presence, his ability to defend, and he's been top class at that for a long, long time. But I think obviously if you want that bit of zip off the bench, maybe Casey brings that. So it's a very, very tight one between both of them. There's an argument for both. Conor Murray hasn't a lot of games played this year. We'll obviously see tomorrow. He probably will start, should start at this stage, because I think Casey hasn't really trained during the week. So I don't know whether he'll be involved. I doubt if he will be involved. So Conor Murray needs matches and obviously can still do a good job there. But I'd probably go for Casey slightly.
Yeah.
And Carberry.
Yeah. Just on the next level, sort of after that at 10, because I saw with interest the Three Red Kings account on Twitter, a Munster fan account, and they were making the point that Jack Crowley did really well in the Emerging Ireland Tour, but it's Frawley that gets the call up to that extended senior squad regardless. Obviously, it points to a huge ambition for Frawley from Andy Farrell and his team.
Yeah, I think obviously they probably see him as the one that can put pressure on Carberry there, as best equipped at the moment. I think obviously what Jack Crowley did in South Africa impressed. He did it again last weekend. We know he has that ability. We've been waiting for it. I think he was held back in Munster a little bit in the last couple of years. If he was in Leinster, he'd probably have 30 or 40 caps for Leinster now at this stage. But Frawley's a very good player. He has an ability to put pressure there, and maybe obviously Sexton is going to be gone after the World Cup, and there needs to be players who are used there. That's just the way it's going to work. So Frawley has an ability to do that job, and I think he's a really good player. And it'll be interesting to see this. Does he start against Fiji, or does he? Carberry needs games as well, but how that's managed throughout November. But I think Carberry will be on the bench. I think there is a pecking order, and unless someone does something really consistently good for a number of games or impresses in training, that kind of makes a difference too. If you can turn one of the coaches' heads and then they give him a chance in a big game. So Frawley was to start for Ireland and have a big game. Well, then the narrative kind of changes, doesn't it?
Yeah, like you have the slightly, it's not unique, but certainly unusual situation in that he's not really in the pecking order. And I know obviously injuries, if Harry Byrne was there, does he get in ahead of Frawley? If he wasn't injured at the minute, does he maybe get in ahead of Frawley? But you have obviously the slightly unusual situation at Leinster where it's Sexton, maybe Harry Byrne, maybe Ross Byrne, maybe Frawley in that order. But yet when it comes to Ireland, Frawley seems to leapfrog the other three almost. The other two.
Yeah, and I think it's literally them looking at it and saying who has the ability. The others have been there and they're not kind of written off. I think obviously Ross Byrne, you could argue that he had that kind of run in the squad for those warm-up games in 2019 where it went a bit pear-shaped for Ireland, and he was kind of suffered a little bit because of that. He's always played really well for Leinster and always done a good job for Leinster, I think.
And unbelievable kicking.
Yeah, I think they look at Frawley and I think they say, look, this guy has an ability to bring you stability, but also bring you that attack as well. And he's a physical player. He's strong. And maybe you just think that he's the one that can step in there and close that gap. Yeah.
What's your back three? So,
Hugo Keenan, Mac Hansen, and Robert Balakoon. I'm a fan of Balakoon's. I think there's obviously be merits for putting Jacob Stockdale back in there. I think he's obviously picking up an injury again. I started the season pretty well, out for a long, long time, and was a mainstay of this team a couple of seasons ago. Still very young and very, very talented. But I love Balakoon when he plays. I think he's such a balanced runner. He's so quick, and he's scoring tries. And Hansen can play in the left and put Balakoon on the right wing, and Hugo Keenan at full back. So even though they're down a number of players, there's probably the next level, and that depth in the back three is a little bit light. I just think that that's an incredibly exciting back three who can all run with the ball.
Yeah, and some exciting propositions in reserve as well, with a couple of the young cap players. Calvin Nash, obviously one of those that continues to impress, and Jimmy O'Brien coming through as well. So lots to be excited about in that front.
Yeah, Jimmy O'Brien has been brilliant, and Nash, I think. So it's good to see that, and it'll be brilliant for Calvin Nash. He's always had that talent. I stifled again a little bit in the last couple of seasons. He just needs to run, and he needs to get to that level and look at the likes of Henshaw, Ringrose, the way they do things up close. So it'll really benefit him being in that Irish squad.
I saw Donald Lennon during the week calling out whether the Munster-Leinster games are a rivalry at all anymore, was the way he put it. He went through the stats. Munster 1 win in 9 games. And they're obviously stacked with injuries at the minute, so it's an easy thing to say, well, Leinster are expected to win tomorrow, and that's that. But there's probably another side to that story as well, Quinny, the optimism, obviously, of what happened last weekend, and maybe it's a significant turning point in the road for this Munster coaching ticket particularly.
It is. I think the concern is, on paper, Leinster, have dominated this fixture in recent years, and I've had to, people in Munster understand that. They understand that there's a gap. There was times in the last couple of seasons that we thought the gap was closing a little bit, but obviously with the start of this season, and I think in those 9 fixtures since Munster last won a league game in 2018, in December 2018, they've played 9 times. Leinster won 8 of them. Munster won 1 game in the Rainbow Cup. And I think what happened last May in the URC and the Aviva probably hurt more than anything, and that was probably more concerning than anything, because number one, it nearly put Munster out of the playoffs, and 2, it was a second stroke third Leinster team that beat Munster, who were obviously missing some players themselves, but it was on paper it was a pretty decent Munster team, and they totally totally overwhelmed in that game and beaten by energy, quality, tactical nous, and Munster were incredibly flat. So it's been a painful situation for Munster, and I think the start of the season, probably the optimism kind of faded away again a little bit, and there's a lot of change there. But with the new coaches coming in, I think we saw some glimpses last year against the Bulls, last week against the Bulls, and I think people, it was funny, some people were saying, well, the Bulls were useless, the Bulls were no good, and maybe there's some truth in that, but I think Munster executed so much better themselves. They had an energy about them that I think is a minimum standard, and even if they made some mistakes again, I think Munster fans were happy that there was a bit of fight, there was a bit of zip in their game, and they were winning collisions against a very physical side, and then a lot of players played really well. So it gives a little shot in the arm again, but you go to Dublin this week and you think that could be taken away. I just think it's really important that It's going to be a weakened Munster team. It's going to be a weakened Leinster team. You talk about the rivalry. The rivalry will always be there as regards, the history between the two teams, but expectation or anticipation of this being a really tight game. How many games back in the day could you say that this could go either way, Adrian? You know what I mean? And that doesn't happen at the moment. And that's just a reality. And obviously Leinster have a kind of their golden generation of players, and they've a lot of depth right across the board. And there's been question marks about some of the Munster players this year and the performances they've put in. So it's a daunting task, but I think Munster have to bring a little bit of fight. And I don't mean aggression as regards, being niggle. I mean just fight and passion themselves and try and build a little bit on what they did last week. Getting the result is, I wouldn't say it's out of their reach, but it's very difficult. But I think if they can build a little bit on the last week, certainly around the attack and forward dominance and stuff like that, not being dominated, and get their set piece right. There was things that people watched the last couple of weeks that was infuriating to watch. I'm sure it was hard on the Munster coaches as well, and probably the players in the reviews, but a couple of steps forward, and my fear is that they could take a step or two backwards. As long as it's not too many steps, I think it'll be okay.
If you're to make an argument for Munster, Quinny, like Leinster, they look brilliant, but maybe not as infallible as they were last season, this time last year. Rory O'Connor and Fiona Hayes were on Wednesday Night Rugby last night, and they were talking about Johnny Sexton being fairly riled up with the referee against the Sharks, and maybe that's something that Munster could do. Like the likes of Peter O'Mahony and Gavin Coombs are well able to rile up opposition players where it needs be. Is that something that the Munster should be doing? There should be a little bit of niggle in these rivalry games anyway. So maybe something like that, and kind of picking on Johnny to use a better want of a better phrase. That's maybe one way to go about it. Maybe.
I think I just think body language across the board. I go back to that game in May. Obviously Munster players were hurting from that game, but sometimes you got to show that hurt with your passion as well out in the field when you lose decisions. Even that Arsenal thing that was on Netflix, which was brilliant. I can't think of the name of it again. I was All or Nothing. I was watching that and I thought it was intriguing. I just think Arteta, one thing jumped out to me. He said to one of the players that just about the standard, that when they lose the ball, they don't look like they're bothered. And in one of these games that they lost, and I just think Munster need to have a little bit of that. They need to look like they're bothered more. That may sound quite insulting if one of the players was watching this or listening and say, well, I really cared and I am hurting, but you've got to show it. And you've got to show it. And Sexton shows it all the time. And it comes down to leadership. Now, you don't want 15-year players whinging and whining around the field. That's not the point here. But they have to show like that they're really frustrated by certain things, and that actually creates a bit of energy, a bit of drive, a bit of a spark in the group, and the crowd kind of get behind that as well at times. So, yeah, obviously Johnny Sexton has that incredible leadership as well, and he's been around, and his temperament has driven him to where he is. I think you start questioning referees and other players other than the captain. Peter O'Mahony can be very, very vocal and is well able to go at referees as well. You've got to get the balance of that right. But I just think right across the board, the players need to show a real kind of energy and really show that even though I know they want it, they've got to show that to people as well. And that sometimes is in your body language and having that bit of a poker face on that you're ready for the fight. I think it does make a difference. Some people say, well, maybe it does. It comes down to quality and you've got to execute. But I think if you go in pretty animated, obviously get the tone of that right, it'll help you. It's basically you're being the underdog, and most teams that play against Leinster are the underdog, aren't they? So you've got to go in. But I think they got to get. If Munster go to Dublin tomorrow thinking if we've got to focus on stopping Leinster, I think that's been the problem before. And I think Johan van Grand's sides have done that. They've gone to to Dublin, kicking the ball a lot, keeping it very tight, keeping it very simple. And yeah, some of the games were tight, 16-9, 16-6. There was 2 of them there, I think. 23, 15. These kind of score lines but they're still dominant wins. They were never like Munster were going to win those games. I think Munster have to be brave against a very good side who they'll have a number of injuries themselves, but they're cohesive, and when they get their tempo right and their pace, they're very, very dangerous, and they can punish sides. So it's a big task, but it's a great opportunity for these players as well. You've got to look at it as opportunity. I think I've spoken there about stuff in the last number of years. If you focus on that too much and with this playing coaching group, you get kind of tied up in it. They've got to look forward. And that's what I mean. If I was in that dressing room, I was thinking, right, very, very conscious and aware of how good Leinster are, but also this is an opportunity to go out and show a little bit of fight and bring a bit of passion to the table.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll see it as well. Enjoy it. Thanks, Quinny.
Yeah, cheers, lads. Thanks
a lot. We've Connacht Scarlets, of course, tonight as well, 7:35 from Galway. It is 9:05 on this Friday morning, and we're delighted to have you with us. Loads of comments coming in this morning, Shane, plenty more, and we'll come to maybe a few of those in a little bit as well. It's OTBAM, brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. Here's what we've got coming up on OTB Sports Radio over the course of the day. 10:30 this morning, it is going to be a crappy quiz, live. Should be absolute delight. I've no doubt about that. 11:30 is football kickoff. It's going to be live. Johnny Ward, Colm, and Clive Allen, Colm's best mate, is going to join us there at 11:30. 1 o'clock, the life and times of the Achill boxer Johnny Kilban on OTB Gold. Westmeath is the subject of Mount Rushmore at 3. Shane Supple will be the Team 33 League of Ireland legend at 4. And then Joe in conversation with Gerrard Nan from 6. You can follow OTB across all of our social channels. Subscribe to the OTB Podcast Network for all the latest and best in sports content. And after the break, we're going to be live in studio with Fergus Farrell, a week on from Damian Brown's chat with us on this very show. We're going to hear about Fergus's epic journey himself alongside Damian, which set off from New York to head to Galway and was cut short after just 13 days for Fergus. First of all, before all of that, last night's news round was Nathan, Mick and Richie discussing the major Ronaldo-shaped issue at Manchester United.
United aren't really a thing anymore with kids, or at least weren't as of a couple of years ago. I remember talking to a friend of mine. We went to the Roy Keane, Gary Neville show a couple of years, and he was saying like none of the kids in their kids' class support Man United. It's just not a thing. Ronaldo brought that back a little bit.
I have a Ronaldo jersey in my house.
Yeah. There you go.
Outrageous.
But that is the thing at the moment. You see a lot of Paris Saint-Germain jerseys when you walk around because of Neymar and Mbappe and Messi. Like, I don't know if you're necessarily a PSG fan. United need that. They need a marquee, and hopefully, like, I mean, I'd imagine it's going to be someone other than Ronaldo in time. But at the moment, he is the one.
But does that actually touch on maybe the bigger picture from Ronaldo's point of view here, that he is a global superstar? So yes, for Manchester United supporters, for fans of the English Premier League who watch it religiously, they will look at this and go, Ronaldo's completely out of order. It's ridiculous. He's 37. His talents are waning. He doesn't deserve to be in the team. He can't play a high press game under Ten Hag. Whereas for 90% of the world, though, Richie, they just know Cristiano Ronaldo, the legend, the greatest player of all time. Yeah. And they dip in and out and they go, well, this guy can't be on the bench. This guy can't be a substitute. He's dead right to storm out.
Yeah, there is a lot of that, and you see it on social media, especially as wrong-headed as it might be. But as you know, if he is, and he certainly does see himself as a brand, then he's doing his own brand a massive disservice, and he's punishing it with his actions, because that's like sitting on the bench with an earring, showing no interest in the game, and walking off at 2 minutes.
But maybe it doesn't do his brand any damage, because maybe he's saying, I am bigger than Manchester United.
Well, ultimately, the problem with Ronaldo was that they couldn't find a suitable, as Mick mentioned there, they couldn't find a suitable buyer for him in the summer, and that plays into the ego, which is that a 37-year-old needs to have a realistic, regardless of their past achievements and accomplishments and abilities, they need to have a realistic sense of where they are in the current marketplace, and he can't command the same type of wages he's at Manchester United literally anywhere else. So that's why they've been stuck with him for 6 months, and this situation has generated itself, is because if he does see himself as a brand, he clearly doesn't know the best way to put that forward at the moment, because the brand isn't the same as what it was 10, 12 years ago when he was in his pomp at Real Madrid. It's severely diminished anyway. And this doesn't do him, or indeed, again, and I hate saying it in football terms, his brand, any favours whatsoever, because wherever he goes to next is going to be a step down, because all of the top clubs around Europe have more or less said that they've no interest in him, and no sensible one would at this stage. He's got a World Cup to prove himself, and he'll probably sabotage Portugal's chances there more than anything else. And from January onwards, like, where's he going to be? The Middle East? America? And who'll care?
Have you subscribed to the OTB Football Podcast?
I'm going to test you, Stephen. Who's on the bench for Arsenal? Whoa, no pressure.
Well, Kenny,
no pressure.
He actually played in the game.
Time up.
He played in the Europa League match
not
on
Pat
Thursday
Jennings
night. Well, we're just seeing him now, stripping down on the bench, Kenny. You can see him.
Is he? Whoever he is.
I'm trying to
Who is that man? Who is that man stripping on the bench? Put them big gloves on.
Subscribe now to the OTB Football Podcast stream wherever you get your podcasts, and download the OTB Sports app.
OTB AM with Gillette in association with Movember. Effortless shave, magnificent Mo.
All right, it's 9:10. You're watching OTB AM. Delighted to have you with us, and delighted as well to say Fergus Farrell joins us in the studio. Good morning, Fergus. How are you doing?
Good morning. I'm good.
Thanks a million for coming in to us. You've got the shorts on. We've just been saying you're a brave man. Fair play on a cold day like it is. People who have been watching the show with any sort of regularity will be familiar with your story. And alongside Damian, obviously, you both set out from New York a couple of months ago to road to Galway, and we'll get into that story. And there's plenty to it. How have you been over the last while, I suppose? Because obviously your journey ended a bit earlier than you would have hoped.
Yeah, unfortunately my journey ended 14 days after it started, but it took me a long time to recover from it. I don't know how Damian's doing it right now, because he was 112 days out in sea and he hasn't stopped going since he arrived. But for the first 4 or 5 weeks I was in absolute bits. Couldn't have no energy, no nothing, but now I'm flying it again, back training, back enjoying life. So really going well now again.
It must have been hugely disappointing, obviously, when the decision had to be made.
So obviously I've looked back at it many times, and no matter how I look at it, I still know the right decision was made, but I cannot get over that feeling of disappointment.
Really?
Being gutted, because we set our sets out to get a world record, 55 days, 13 hours and odd minutes. And up to that point, we were, I would say, on track to do it. And then with me getting off the boat, it destroyed all chances, all hope. So that for me is just gut-wrenching, because we had put in such an effort to put ourselves into that position. And then when we got onto the Gulf Stream and the boat started moving at 4, 5, 6 knots per hour with less effort, that's when I started failing, which was, it was. So
you started to feel unwell a little bit almost for the previous couple of days, or was it more suddenly that it?
It was a gradual thing, really, but over kind of 2 days. So I remember the first day. Now, because I found it tough for all the time. I won't lie. There was nothing comfortable about it. There was nothing easy about it. It was relentless. But I had myself geared up for that. But what I hadn't myself geared up for was having absolutely no energy and not knowing how to deal with that. And the heat was also something that I struggled massively with. But say about 2 days before I actually got taken off Crushing McCree, I started feeling, lethargic, getting deeper breaths, taking longer to recover. And so I started, because we hadn't been eating well, I kind of forced more food down to me to see, was it just energy I needed? Then I said, right, I need to start drinking more water, see was dehydration, because when we went out on the Galway Bay for it was pretty much 40 odd hours, I remember I got a severe headache, and that was just pure dehydration. Right. So I was here going, maybe I'm not drinking enough water. I had been drinking loads of water, but I just took more water on board. That didn't help me. The food didn't help me. And this was over a course of period of time. And then it went into the second night, and that's when I literally, poor old Damo, after his 2 hour shift of getting good mileage in, I was getting on the seat to do my rowing, and I was doing nothing. I couldn't do anything. And literally, he get in the cabin, I'd row for a few minutes. I was falling over the oars, just no energy whatsoever. I wasn't sore anywhere. It was just, there was nothing, no life to me. And I was deep breaths. And when I was trying to row, then I was doing 2 breaths per stroke rather than 1 breath. And then when I wasn't rowing, I was just really labour breathing. And then I'd lie down the deck. And I don't know if you've seen the boat, but there was absolutely no place on that deck you could lie that'd be comfortable. But I didn't care because I couldn't stay sitting up on the seat. So I just lie down there and there'd be something sticking in me somewhere, but I actually just didn't care because I was resting. And say maybe half an hour would pass by and I'd try and get back on the seat. And once I got back onto that seat, I was exhausted again. And then the last straw was, so there was a compass right in front of us that I had to have lit up to see it. Now, I wouldn't have the best vision. Damian's really good vision, but a few days before, and there was no problems watching that or looking at it and making sure that I was rowing in the right direction. But for that last night, it was complete blur. I couldn't see it properly. So even to just keep the boat going in the right direction was becoming impossible, because to see it, I'd had to get off the seat, get down, look at it. And by the time I was back up in the seat, a wave would have come and I could have been, I could have been turned anyway again. So even that was just... Is
there like a level of frustration? I'd imagine there is a level of frustration with that, Fergus, as well, because you know better than anyone what your body's capable of. So when your body's almost betraying you like that at the time when you've revved it up to not do that, it must be quite frustrating is probably a decent word to use.
So that's a good question. Yeah, there is a frustration, but I think the frustration was more around not knowing why I couldn't do it. Because, as I said, like leading up to this, I'd done plenty of rowing, and I'd done a lot of fitness, a lot of weight training. I thought I had, from my accident going back in 2018, and I suppose this is my first ever mammoth challenge to do. And I thought I had my body prepared and trained and my mindset, everything boxed off to take on this challenge. But when I look back at it now, maybe I should have, because obviously Damian, he's been doing Everest, the 7 summits, he's rowed another ocean, he's done, the Mar de Sables, so many different things, and he's been building up the resilience in his body. Whereas I've come off having a spinal cord injury into one of the biggest challenges you can do for mankind. So maybe when I look back at it, I should have maybe done some smaller challenge to build up that resilience to see where I was. But I just thought, because of what I came through, and I felt very strong and I felt very good, and the training and everything, the mindset was great. I thought I just could do it and I could nail it. But maybe just the body just gave up. I honestly don't know.
Like, for people who maybe are unfamiliar with that story, like the accident in 2018, to get in a boat and attempt to do this was quite remarkable, and even to last, I know it's no consolation, but through 2 weeks in the Atlantic rowing, considering what you went through, you might just tell people who maybe aren't familiar with that story what happened there.
Okay, so 26th of October 2018, very simple workplace accident. I was lifting a metal bench, picked it up with another guy, and in an instant, ruptured my T9, T10 and T11, and one of those discs leaked into my spinal cord and severed my spinal cord by 90%. Well, they call it pinching, and left me completely paralysed, and I was classed as a grade A spinal cord injury. And I was rushed up to the Maher Hospital, got emergency surgery done, and ultimately I was told from that point onwards that I was going to be in a wheelchair for the rest of my life, and that what the medical profession were going to do for me was make my life as comfortable as possible, and that was it. And after that, I was given a stat that 5%. The stat was, if you get movement after 72 hours, you have a 5% chance of gaining some sort of strength.
Right.
Some strength, not walking, just strength in your movement. I didn't get anything after 72 hours, and after 21 days, I never forget it, up down the St. Finbarrs in Galway, because I'd been transferred down to Galway waiting for my bed in the NRH. I moved my big right toe. It's like 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, and I was here going, am I hallucinating or what is going on? And I had to wait until like 7 o'clock in the morning before a person came around. I was like all night going, is that moving? And so from there on, it took off, and thankfully I said, I'm here. I was able to walk into you today and have this chat, and like when something's taken away from you, you realise how much it is to you. It's so hence why I've done this, tried to take on this challenge. I want to try and show people that don't ever give up on yourself. Push yourself as hard as you can, because you're the only person who's going to do it. Also, you're going to have physios, you're going to have doctors around you, you'll have everybody around you helping you. But if you don't want to do it, they're not going to force you to do it. So that was why I took on this challenge, was to show people, like, you can do whatever you want to do if you have the right mindset and you apply yourself correctly.
Can you take us back to the night? You talk about and it's really important that you've given the context of where you're coming from, because as Shane said, it really puts the achievement in good context. Take it back to the night where it was the night, wasn't it, where you finally began to say, listen, this is just not happening for me, it's not working out. I presume you tried to fight that initially, as you said, for the first little while, and then it comes to a point where you're like, that's it, I'm going to have to talk to him now. Is that how it happens? Or
yeah, it was, because I was like, he was going into the cabin, because literally our changeover was like within, like, you get the 10-minute call, right? Wake up and you literally get yourself ready, get out, and you're back in. And especially at night, it was just like literally you wouldn't see each other at all. You're like, hi, how are we getting on? And so, but I was like, during that time, I was just there was nothing. I thought, I'll rest here for half an hour and I'll get my energy back and I'll go. And then the next 2-hour shift that I was meant to be rowing again, after going into the cabin and trying to sleep in the cabin, I thought, over those periods of times I'd build up my energy again, whereas when I was meant to be rowing, I wasn't rowing. So that extra bit of rest and then going back into the cabin for those, it would start building my, I get a bit of energy back and the extra food. And then the last straw was I got a big chocolate bar and a big bag of Haribos just to give me this insulin spike. And again, just flat, nothing. At that stage, then I said, and then obviously my mind started chasing. I'm here going, what's going on with me? And the last time I felt this type of really struggling to breathe was it was in the Maher Hospital. I got blood clots in my lungs about a week after I got the operation, because I was still in the bed, and about a day before that, I just remember that real struggling to breathe. Now, a totally different scenario as to the boat, but I was remember that real struggling to breathe and just never seemed to have enough oxygen. That was exactly how I felt on the boat. Whether that was from anxiety or stresses, I have no idea. But I just remember at that stage, I kind of, I said, Damo, before I woke him up, it was around 6 o'clock in the morning. It was just getting light, it was just beginning to come into daylight. And I got up and I went into where we had our medical kit, and I'd bought all the medical stuff. So I had an idea we had something like this to test myself. So I went in and just looked at it, and straight away I seen the rating, it said 86. And I went, oh, sugar. I went, oh no, because anything below 96 is dangerous level, blood clotting level. And then below that, so I was at 86. And I was going, oh no. So I woke up Damo. And I said, Damo, there's something going on here. And I told him the crack with the blood clots and how I knew what the reading should be and all this type of stuff. And I gave him the instrument to check your oxygen levels, and he read 98 straight away. Now, when I put it back on about 5 minutes later, I was back up to 88, but I didn't climb from there. And I was literally at this stage, I was like, and even to get in the cabin or anything like that was just a huge mission. So things just started going through my head. I was here, no, I can't be getting blood clots out here, because once you have blood clots, supposedly you're more prone to getting them again. And the thing is, because I've this reduced sensation in my legs, my circulation of my blood wouldn't be as good as what, say, yours would be. So again, blood clots arise from being, I suppose, having still in one position. Now, I know we're rowing all the time, but it was still in the one position. So again, all this thing was going through my head, and I was going, I have 3 kids at home, I always said, I'm taking on this challenge, but one thing I'm not going to do is put my life at risk.
And you felt it was, obviously, at that point?
Well, I don't know what I felt at the time, being honest with you. I was not thinking straight at all.
And was the conversation, so you say, listen, you're both playing this out, and then you both come to the conclusion, or you're like, listen, who says it, or how does that come about where you're like, right, it's done?
Well, when I told Damian the crack, I told him the history and what I'm feeling, he was going, oh man, we have to ring Chris Martin, or on ground sport, and he's a world famous ocean rower, and he, really well respected man in the ocean rowing industry, So straight away got to that phone, rang him up, put me through to him. I told him the symptoms, and he goes, okay, this is not good. And then he said, hold on there, I'll put you through to a maritime doctor. So 5 minutes later we got the phone call, and maritime doctor, and I gave him the symptoms. At that stage I just had in my head, okay, maybe what they'll say to me is, come back in 6 hours with the readings, maybe 12 hours, and then 24 hours, or something like that. Do you know what I mean? But after I gave them the readings, I gave them my history, they kind of go, well, what do you want to do? And I was like, well, this is not a decision I can make. And after I said that to him, the doctors went, you're gone. Not even 30 seconds. You're gone, you're finished. It was just that flat, done. That straight, you're done.
So you obviously tried to find out, is there a boat nearby, and eventually you get this massive cargo ship that comes in and lifts you away, and you go off to New York, and you go into hospital at that point, and they run all the tests, I presume. And I actually didn't go into hospital in New York because number one, because of my spinal injury, health insurance doesn't cover a lot. I think the travel insurance doesn't cover a lot because I've a lot of pre-existing conditions. So number one, there's very little point in me having health insurance traveling, no matter what, because they'll always put it down as condition. And also the expedition wasn't insurable. Okay. So I had no insurance, and that was obviously going through my mind as well in going back in the boat, and said, oh my God, I'm going to go into the hospital here now, and I'm going to have a 20 or 30,000 euro of a bill coming out of it, and so that was going through my mind. I was in contact with Paul Cleary, a good friend of myself and Damos, who was in New York, and all fairness, now there's people back in Ireland working away as well to see what they could do. So it was actually Paul who organised a really good doctor. So I went to the doctor straight away when he picked me up, and they took tests and things like that, and I just said to them, look, all I want to know is, am I safe to fly home? When I get home, I'll get everything sorted. I said, people give out about the health service in Ireland, but for me, I've never had anything but the highest of praise from it. And the oxygen had righted itself at some point. And
no, I was still struggling, really struggling with the oxygen. So they gave me oxygen in the boat. Because it was a brand new, it was only 18 months old, this cargo, this tanker, which again, I was so lucky because I heard some very bad stories about some old tankers. So I got oxygen levels, and they got me up to, I think it was 92%. And they got up really high once they had the oxygen mask on me. But once it took off, and then once I was without it for a while, I dropped down again. So, and again, there was no medical experts on board, so all they were doing was taking readings and things like that, and give me whatever to keep me fresh. So when I got there, this is what I don't understand. Damian's after coming off 112 days in the ocean, and he's functioning like nothing happened. For 4 to 5 weeks, I was struggling massively. Now, my blood oxygen levels is around 96, 97% now. It should be 98, 99. So I'm still not fully there, but I can train, I can do all that type of stuff. But for a period of time when I got off the boat, I just wasn't able to do anything that took a physical demand on me.
Right. When you talk about Damian there, it's almost like robot comes to mind. Those last number of days, and people who've listened to the Deep Roots podcast and stuff will have got a sense of this anyway, but was there tension on the boat? Was it causing any disruption between the two of you? The fact that Damian was, I guess, feeling okay and feeling grand in comparison, but did that cause any kind of tensions on the boat itself?
No, that's the surprising thing. Prior to me doing the departure, so the first few days was a massive learning curve because we never got to do the, we should have tried to have got out for like a week over the continental shelf over Ireland to, you know, get a good learning experience of what it was like to be on a little boat on your own out there. But unfortunately, we didn't get that opportunity. So for the first week, when we're really pushing hard and trying to get the kilometres, the nautical miles underneath the belt, I was doing all of my learning as well. So I found that first week difficult, very difficult, because the amount of times I banged my head off the side of the boat was just crazy. And the amount of times I burnt my hands from just, you know, the jet oil and trying to put it into the sachets for the food. But as that week passed, then I was getting more comfortable. And I think even Damian was, like I said, he could see that I was actually beginning to settle into a routine and everything like that. And like up to that last 2 days, I probably had my best day just beforehand. I was feeling great. I was feeling brilliant. I was going, okay, I'm beginning now to get into the swing of things. And then got into the Gulf Stream. And that's when things started getting a little bit easier. Now, there's nothing easy, by the way, but a little bit easier. And that's when I started failing. So that's, it's kind of gut-wrenching, because that first block is really, really difficult. You know, and you get into the Gulf Stream, and then you get that little bit of assistance bring you up towards Ireland, and you're going from 1 to 2 knots per hour to the next minute 4, 5, 6 knots per hour, and that's when I started failing. And that's. But there was no tension as such. I think Damian was quite good to me that way. You know,
there's a serious mental aspect to it as well, and like. There's the famous photographs of just leaving Manhattan with the night skyline in the background, which is just insane when you think of the distance that was to go. Was there any a point maybe when you see the skyline behind you where you're like, Jesus, the enormity of the task is laid bare in front of you? Like, the next time we touch land will be in Galway.
No, I don't let myself think that way. I was just there to do it day by day by day. And the funny thing is, people often say to me is like, you know, did you ever feel unsafe? And there was not one day I was out in that ocean whereby I felt unsafe on that boat.
Right.
And I don't know why, but I just never let myself think that way. Do you know? And that was the same with, I just remember having Manhattan in the background, and my thought was, good luck, see you again. You know, it wasn't about, the next time I see land. I wasn't thinking that way at all. I don't know why. It just wasn't in my mindset thinking that the next time I'll see somebody else or land was going to be, you know, 55 days later. I just never, I don't know why, I just never thought that way.
What Shane is hinting at there was where we were chatting to Damian last week. He was, and I had listened to a load of the pod, and over that first couple of weeks, and I don't know how aware you were of what he was chatting about on the pod or whatever, if it was a soundproof situation, but it seemed to me like there was a tension between the two of you, that, you know, you were, as you've said yourself, like that, and why would you not be, your first ever, like you say, your first ever challenge of that nature, and maybe, you know, I don't know, struggling, but certainly coming to grips with it mentally as much as anything else. Whereas he was like, I want to get miles, I want to get miles, I want to get miles. And you're like, maybe you're in a slightly different space, and that in itself is creating a bit of tension. That was certainly the way he would maybe describe it when he was with us.
Well, personally, I thought I was actually really pulling out the stops in terms of the amount of mileage I was getting in. So I didn't, again, I knew setting off that the first few weeks was always going to be kind of a challenge, because we're getting set into routine, and we're both in very uncomfortable surroundings, and we're getting used to each other as much as good mates and great mates we are. You know, the closer we ever slept beside each other was like 2 single beds in a big bedroom, you know. So there was a lot of learnings to be done there. But for me, maybe on his side, maybe he thought I was lacking, but I know from my side, I knew Damo wouldn't be lacking, you know, so I didn't have to have that mindset. But also I knew I was giving my all.
Yeah.
So I was very comfortable where I was, and I knew Damian, as his nature, would be giving his all as well. So for me, I didn't have that sense of as tension or anything like that. Maybe I think he alluded to it, that he had that tension on me, but I didn't definitely have it the other way, because look, he's done it. I knew he'd be doing it, and I knew I was giving absolutely every bit I could give.
Yeah. The other thing he mentioned was he had, when you got off, he felt this anger. So he spent for he basically said until he got into Galway Bay that he had this residual anger, which I guess on one level is, I put it to him, that's a big emotion to have towards somebody. And on one level, I mean, I guess it's understandable. I know you sat down to you were doing an interview for the documentary, whatever. Have you do you sit down? Because it's definitely obvious, right, chatting to you here this morning, that the two of you, you're clearly best mates, but you're on two different paths in terms of some of the experiences, which again is any three people you put in a room, two people you put in a room, you have a conversation, you leave. Sometimes people leave with totally different perceptions of it. Yeah. But have you got a chance to sit down away from the limelight and sort of pick through stuff, or is your relationship just, you don't need that, you're just good friends and that's not required almost?
Okay, so just you're on about different paths and things like that. So my path was, it's not a chosen path. It was a path that was ordained by my accident. Okay.
Yes.
So,
yeah.
I'm going to do this through default, really. Whereas, say, Damian's is a chosen path, and he's very driven and very focused on what he wants to achieve and so on. Whereas, obviously, I was kind of thrown into it, and then I obviously discovered that I really like challenge and so on. So, obviously, our mindsets are a little bit different, and we understand that. So, in relation to how to say, so we haven't sat down, himself over a cup of coffee, over a pint, and had a chat about all these things yet. Because number one is Damian's absolute flat out with all the engagements and everything like that. But it's funny now you said that, because this morning, because he's coming up he has something in the Mansion House this morning, and we came up in two different cars. So I rang him around 7:30 and said, "Are you up?" And he because we're obviously at that function together last night, and he said, yeah, I'm just in Leakslip now. And I said, "Oh, you're okay, the traffic's fine." And at that stage I said, "Look, when we had a chat about other things, and then I said, look, Damo, when you're finished, I'm in Dublin, I'm flying out this evening, so I'm hanging around. When you're finished, he's going to Donegal." I said, "We'll grab a coffee." I was the first time we'll be able to sit down away from everybody, not down in Galway where people were going into Damo. People come from, they'll be 100 metres away and they see Damo and they'll make a beeline for him.
It's hard to miss.
Yeah. And so the first time we'll have a chat. No, we'll go into a deep, meaningful conversation. Probably not. But just the first time we'll actually sit down and say, well done, or whatever we need to say, but no, we haven't.
You'll get the chance to do it.
Exactly. It's just not the time.
It's funny when I think about Damian's story and even the way the last night panned out, you're thinking, right, for whatever about the documentary, there's a movie in this, and but more to that, there's your story is a massive part of it, and a lot of people wouldn't have realised the backstory and what happened to you as well. When you talk about, maybe you could have picked a smaller challenge, not smaller challenge, but a different challenge to start as your first one. Do you have an idea of where you go from here? What's next?
I've thought about it several times. Now, look, as I said, I have 3 young kids. I'm busy enough with work. And I do want to do something, and I want to do it more in the sphere of raising money and awareness than anything else. But what I want to do, I still don't know, because nothing has kind of grasped me and say, that's what I want to do. But for me, the next project I want to do, so if I say at the time I walked across the country a year after my operation or my accident, that was my project, and I was able to do it from start to finish, and I loved it. Because I'm a self-employed person. I've always been somebody who just grabs things and goes with it, and controls them start to finish. Whereas this Project Empower, I was complete opposite, and
you were the co-pilot.
Yeah, and I struggled with that at times. So the next project I want to do is, and I will do something, but I said nothing's grasped me yet. But I'll be doing it. That will be, I'll take ownership of it myself, and that I can look back at it with a lot of pride, and obviously something that I can complete.
Well, look, I think on that front, I think you can absolutely look back on, I think Shane nailed it earlier on when he said, given your journey, and it wasn't how you would have designed it, obviously, to set out, but 2 weeks wrong in the Atlantic is a serious achievement. So, you should take that from it, and and be sure that whatever you're up to the next time, will you give us a shout and come in, and we'll pick through it with you again.
Fair play, look.
Best luck with the coffee as well, with Damo.
Yeah, thanks very much. If a black eye after this,
I don't know who might end up with a black eye out of that one, but thanks a million, Fergus. Cheers, thanks a lot for coming in. Loads of lovely comments coming in as well, to say well done. So that is almost it from us for this morning. It's 9:38 on this Friday morning. OTBAM brought to you with Gillette in association with Movember, effortless shave, magnificent Mo, and you can sign up or donate now at Movember.com. We're back on Monday morning. It'll be Gerrard, Nathan, and his incredible Gillette Labs performance rankings that you've all grown so accustomed to. We're going to have Quinny reflecting on the weekend's URC, including that big one at the Aviva. Reaction to all the football, latest on the new Villa manager, whoever that might be, Ronaldo, and plenty more as well. Besides, in the meantime, we're going to leave you with John Giles chatting to Nathan on the show last night. Enjoy and have a great weekend.
In the last hour, Manchester United have issued a statement saying that Cristiano Ronaldo will not be part of the Manchester United squad for this Saturday's game against Chelsea. The rest of the squad is fully focused on preparing for that fixture. That came after it emerged this afternoon that Ronaldo had refused to come on in the game last night against Tottenham before he just stormed down the tunnel and went straight out of the stadium before the match had even finished. What are your thoughts on all this?
I think it's outrageous, Nathan. You know, I think he's... I mean, for a player to do that, I've never known a player do that before, ever. And we've all seen a lot of players who are very disappointed about not being playing. But this is the second incident that I've had this year. I think the pre-season they were playing a friendly match, and he was subbed, came into the dressing room, and went home before the players came in. But I think this is worse now. This is a worse incident, Nathan. You can't have that and run a club properly.
They've acted swiftly, so the word is that he's training with the kids. He's not going to be a part of the squad. Should that be it for Ronaldo? Should Eric Ten Hag say you're not playing for this club again? Simple as that, regardless of how much money it costs?
I think he could have done it very early, before the season started, Nathan. Because I think from what we can gather in the press that Ronaldo was insisting on a transfer before the season started, and the manager said no. But, you know, if a player wants to get away, you're not going to get the best out of him. And it's gone from bad to worse, the morale. I mean, if you're trying to get a morale in a dressing room, and if you think about it, what is morale? You know, morale is everybody pulling together, playing for the same manager in a way that is suitable for the club. All those things, that's morale. If you get a dressing room, though, where Ronaldo's in there, he's not happy, then you don't get the morale that you're looking for. In fact, you know, the way they played the other night against Spurs was very good. There was a spirit about the team. They won well, they played well, but mostly the spirit is there. But if you get a prominent player, a great player like Ronaldo, not pulling with the rest of the lads, you don't get the morale and the team spirit that's needed. So I think the best thing they can do is let him go, get him out of the dressing room altogether.
Can any part of you see it from Ronaldo's side? 37 years of age, one of the greatest footballers of all time, 5-time World Player of the Year. Success has followed wherever he has gone. And he's looking at this Manchester United group who had been underperforming, feeling that, you know, he's maybe not just deserving of a place in the team, maybe he's still the best player at the club, and he's sitting on the bench on a huge night like last night, and he's just a bit fed up, and he hasn't handled it particularly well. But really, has he done any major damage by doing that and not coming on for the last couple of minutes of a game?
I think that there's a lead up to what happened last night, Nathan. That's been going on for a while, and obviously he thinks he should be in the team. He's a great player, has been a great player for years, but that doesn't give you the license to do what he did. You know, no matter how great the player is and what he's done in the past, it's the now that matters. And you know, if you get a player who's on the bench and goes into the dressing room or leaves the pitch before the players come in, and that's no way for anybody to behave. Doesn't matter. He has been one of the best players in the world, but that doesn't give you an excuse to behave in the manner that he's behaving.
It does feel unprecedented for a player to firstly refuse to come on, then walk down the tunnel, and then not just stop there, go to the dressing room, pick up your gear, and head home before the match has even finished. In all your years being involved in the game, have you ever seen anything like it?
No, definitely not. I mean, he did it at the early part of the season as well. Not quite what he did last night, but you can't have that as a manager. It doesn't matter what a player has done. It's what he's doing now for the club in terms of morale, team spirit. All the players see this, and I know from my own experience, you can't do it. You can't get a morale, you can't get a team spirit in the manner in which is needed for any club if this type of thing is happening. And don't forget, again, I'd go back to start the season where he was insisting on a transfer. I think at that stage they should have just let him go, because you can't keep a player, especially a player of his stature, in a club who wants to get away. What attitude is that in terms of the rest of the players, Nathan? That's only one player. You're talking about 16, 17, 18 other players. And it ruins the whole lot if you're trying to get a team spirit going. Everybody has to be pulling together.
Like, this has been building, as you say. Something similar happened, more low-key pre-season game, right the way up to even at the weekend, throwing his arms up in the air when he's been taken off, incredibly frustrated that he's not getting to play the full 90 minutes. Is there, if he comes out over the coming days and apologises, is the right thing then for Erik ten Hag to let him back in and even just keep him till January, and there's an awful lot of games to be played, keep him fit, keep him involved in the European matches? Or is this the final straw? Is this just such an unacceptable breach of the club's ethos and what you expect from professional footballers that there can be no way back?
No, there's no way back from it, Nathan. But don't forget, at the start of the season when the new manager came in, Ronaldo was looking for a transfer. It looked like he had some club fixed up, and the manager said, "No, you're not going." And then he's played up, I think, since then. In other words, he wasn't one of the group. He wasn't one of the players that was going to pull together. He wanted to go from the start. I think the wisest thing to do for the club was for the manager to let him go. Say, okay, you can't have a player playing for you, Nathan, with the team spirit that's required. If he's telling you he wants to go, let him go, because it doesn't work. It never works. I've never seen it work out in football where somebody wants to go. And they always do things to let the manager or make the manager let him go. The manager didn't do that, but he's paying the price for it himself now.
He picked a bad night as well to throw his toys out of the pram, considering the Manchester United performance and result in the 2-0 victory against Tottenham. I think without question the best performance of Erik ten Hag's time in charge at United. What was it about the performance last night that seemed to bring United to another level?
I don't think it was a coincidence, Nathan, that they played in the spirit that we haven't seen them play when Ronaldo wasn't playing. Now they pulled together as a team. That's the best I've seen them play this season. It was a really good performance against a good team, well deserved to win. But you could see the attitude of the players together. It's one thing about football. If things are not right, it manifests itself on the pitch, Nathan. If things are not right in the dressing room, it manifests itself on the pitch, or else there would be no such thing as good team spirit and a bad team spirit. Those players went out last night. Nothing sure, in my opinion, that we're going to show Ronaldo this is what we can do without him. I don't think it was a coincidence.
In terms of the individual performances, Casemiro had to wait a while, and we were all wondering why he was waiting to get that opportunity in the middle of midfield, considering Manchester United had spent so much money on him and his brilliant reputation that he built up through the years at Real Madrid. How impressed were you with him last night and over recent games, and how he's changing that Manchester United midfield?
Well, he's been a good player for a long time, Nathan, and he's obviously improved them. But I think that the spirit, Fernandes was really good last night. I haven't seen him play well all this season, like the way I've seen him moan at the referees and not behaving himself very well. But he was a real player last night, and then Fred was playing the way. When you see them playing the way they played, Nathan, it's not a coincidence. There's something about them. You can see it in the team. Players getting back, chasing back, doing the things that they should be doing. And they looked a real team last night. You know, Ronaldo's been a great player. There's no doubt about that. But the thing in football, what's gone is gone. You know, he's not a great player for Manchester United now. I mean, he's 36, 37 years of age, and he's not in with the lads or with the manager, in my opinion. Again, I go back to the pre-season. He wants to go. He told the manager he wants to go. There must have been something lined up. And the manager said, no, you're not going. Well, your heart can't be in the club if you want to go. And the rest of the players in the dressing room, and very, very quickly picked that up. In other words, we're not together. He's not one of us. Then you don't get the team spirit that's required. And I don't think it was a coincidence that they got together last night and played like a team with Ronaldo not playing. And again, I repeat, Ronaldo's been one of the great players of all time. But the now is now, where the past is gone. So Manchester United have to concentrate now on what they have to do without him.
What about the Tottenham performance at Old Trafford? They had a chance to go within a point of Arsenal at the top of the table and put in one of those performances that we've seen a lot under Antonio Conte over the last year, where it was just very flat, didn't create a huge amount of chances, seemed to get overrun in midfield. What's the missing piece of the jigsaw for Conte to get Tottenham to the level that they can compete in the big games? Because that's something he pointed out afterwards, that in the big matches against the other leading teams, they seem to consistently struggle.
I don't think he has the players at the moment, Nathan. I think he's making a huge job, a big job of the players he has at his disposal at the moment. I don't think they've got a real player in midfield, for example. They were well outdone in midfield. And if you're outdone in midfield, Nathan, you don't win matches. And Manchester United were very good in midfield last night. Fred was good, Fernandes was good, lad you mentioned was good. They outplayed them in midfield. And overall they outplayed. I mean, Kane never got into the game. Son, two of their best players, never got into the game because they're waiting for a supply. They have to be supplied with the ball. They never got it because Manchester United didn't allow them to get it. But I think from Conte's point of view, I think Conte is performing really, really good. As a great manager to do what Spurs are doing, to be quite honest, with the players that he has, Nathan.
You don't think then there's a blind spot or anything?
Manchester United players now you'd be talking. You know, with the players that Manchester United have, the talent that they have, you know, to get them all together like he has done with the Spurs players. And I think he's done a huge job with them. Hasn't spent much money. A lot of limited players, in my opinion. But he has a team there. But last night, Manchester United were too good for them. They were really, really good, Manchester United, last night.
Liverpool 1, Manchester City 0. I think everyone going into this game was a bit concerned about what City might do to Liverpool, considering Liverpool's form, and that we mightn't get the quality of game that we've seen over the last 4 or 5 years from these two sides. We needn't be concerned. This was, quality-wise, it felt as good as we've got over the last couple of years. It was a real intensity to the game. What were Liverpool doing differently against City that they haven't been doing for the rest of the season?
I would say attitude, Nathan. You know, they were up for it. And if you look back, if you see what they can do against Manchester City, what do you put down for some of the performances they put on against much lesser opposition? My take is that they weren't up for it in a way. I mean, if you're playing Manchester City, I'd say Liverpool, like most teams would be, you're scared, and that gets you up for the match. And that's what happened to That's what happened to Liverpool, in my opinion. They were the Liverpool that we know and have been absolutely brilliant for the last few years. So you'd have to look at I'm sorry to say, at the other performances that they weren't up for it against the lesser teams. And you have to be up for it against every team, Nathan. That's what makes the champions. So Liverpool showed what they can do. They played really well deserved to win the match. But that's what you have to do week in, week out, which they have been doing for the last few years. It's only this few years from the start that they went up for it in a way that we know Liverpool can and should do. And it was a really, really good performance.
So would that suggest to you that there's a possibility that it was a one-off, that this was Manchester City that brought the best out of them, and maybe at times over the season they can get themselves up for big Champions League games or matches against the top six, but that a bit of the spark is gone, and the relentlessness that they've shown over the last 3 or 4 years, that they may not be able to get that back?
Well, the performance against City the other day should tell them this is what we have to do. Do you know what I mean? I'm sure that the manager would be telling them that week in and week out, but the manager can only say so much. You can't do anything about it on the pitch. It's from the players themselves that get together now and say this is what we have to do. And it should be a situation where they know if they do what they can do, they're up there again. So I think that's the way they learn from it. I don't think it'll go the other way, where they'll go back to where they were, where they went up for the matches in the way that they should be up. I mean, that's your starting point, being up all the time. That's what creates champions, Nathan. You know, like if you're playing against the top team, you're scared. You go out. You're going to have to do. You're going to have to do everything you can to beat this team. But what happens then? Sometimes you play a team that you know is not as good as you are, and it's a hard thing. I've heard Graham Souness talk about it when he played, that you have to have the same attitude. You're going. I know from playing my time at Leeds, when you're playing against a team that's inferior to you in terms of attitude, the only way they can beat you is to try harder than you. So if you try harder than them, they've no chance of beating you. And that's what Liverpool have to get back into their game again. And that was a great show the other day. Now they have to. I know they have played since, and they won against West Ham. So maybe they are back to where they. I didn't see the West Ham match, but you have to treat West Ham and not Forest the same as you treat Manchester City. That's well known for all the clubs that win trophies, Nathan, is to be up for all the matches, especially the matches that the team is not considered to be as good as you. The only way they can win is having a better attitude, and that's the attitude you have to have. Week in, week out, week in, week out. That's what makes the great teams. And I think that hasn't been the case with Liverpool this season so far, but maybe that match and the match against West Ham, which I haven't seen, would get them back to where we know they can be.
What did you make of the behaviour of the two managers during the game?
Not good. It wasn't good for the game, Nathan. And I think what's happened now, I think that the two dugouts, as we call them, are far too near each other. You know, football is a very emotional game. You know, one manager will see it was a penalty, the other manager wasn't. That's what it's like on the touchline. So you can't be near each other. You're too near each other. You can hear each other talking. It makes loads of rows. It does all sorts of things. They've got to get away from each other. But some of the stuff that came out of the match wasn't good. That's for sure.
And just to finish then on Manchester City, beaten for the first time in the league this season, as is his wont and his way, Pep Guardiola tried a few things different, and Phil Foden was way out on the left-hand side. Kevin De Bruyne was playing felt a bit more of an advanced role, very different from, say, the team that took Manchester United apart in the derby. Can you understand what he was trying to do?
No, I think they have been playing in those positions. You know, the Foden wide on the left. De Bruyne hasn't been playing as a midfield player, Nathan. But what's happened, I think, in my opinion, Manchester, what Pep wants to do, in my opinion, is not perfect by any means. And when he played against a team like, what I mean by that, if you look at the goal, Nathan, that Salah scored, that was a long kick out from the Liverpool goalkeeper, with one player back, who didn't do well, and Salah got through nearly from the halfway line to score. And 3 or 4 minutes before that, he was also through to score. So I think it's the way it's Pep with the players that he has. It's attack. I don't think there's much emphasis on defending at all. Now, I think most of the teams that he plays against can't cope with what they do going forward. Liverpool were able to do so. And I think, from what it's worth, from my point of view, I don't think it's a good way of playing football. I think when Salah was up the pitch, there should have been at least 2 defenders back marking Salah. Whereas they were looking for the goal. And against most of the teams they play against, they're not good enough to take advantage of the lack of defending from City. Liverpool were.
We got to leave it there, John. Unfortunately, we're out of time. Great stuff as always. We'll talk to you next Thursday.
Okay, Nathan. Thanks.
OTB AM with Gillette in association with Movember. Effortless